OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Very good morning to you. Thursday morning's OTB AM. You're very welcome along to the show this morning. We're with you as always between now and 10 o'clock this morning. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Delighted to be joined in studio this morning by the wonderful Aisling O'Reilly, Meath's finest. How are you, Aisling?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Shane.
See, look, you got to give these introductions. Ger doesn't do them.
No.
We all deserve an adjective or some describing word for us.
It's only you that does them. Yeah, last time I was on, I think he gave me a big one as well.
There you go. And Colm gets a nice one as well. Usually from me, but Ger, kind of tongue-in-cheek, give him a bit of a slag, left, right and centre. Loads to get into between now and 10 o'clock this morning. Plenty of bits and bobs in the show from across different sports. I was triple screening again last night, actually. So I did this last week. I can't remember what I was watching last week. Yeah, it was the Mechanic Cup as well. So I paid my €12 to watch.
€12.
I know, it's steep.
Yeah.
So the way Ulster GA TV are doing it this year is you pay €12 a game, or you could pay €30 for a Mechanic Cup season ticket for the screen. And I was like, maybe just in case Monaghan don't get past the group stages, which they haven't, I'll just pay the €12 and it'll cost me £24. So I watched the Down game last week and their 2-point win against Donegal last night in Ballybuffet. I mean, it was absolutely torrential conditions, so I was kind of glad to be sitting in my living room and not watching it from there. And then I had the City Southampton game on, and then of course I flicked over to the Snooker naturally enough. Got the penalty shootout in for the Forest Wolves game as well. So.
And can you concentrate? Like, do you walk away from there thinking, oh yeah, I know what went on in every game, every sporting event, or do you think, geez, no, my head's mush? That's what I'd be like. Yeah,
you're kind of you're trying to focus on one. Like I was obviously focused on Monaghan in particular.
Yeah, that's the number one
priority. Your county is your number one. But then, yeah, as soon as Southampton score goals, you're like, okay, this game's got interesting. All of a sudden,
not what you expect.
100%. Galvin Mizzunu with an assured performance, which is good to see. He's I mean, I'd love to see Southampton go on, and if they go on and win this trophy, now they have Newcastle in the semi-final over 2 legs, but I mean, Kelleher led Liverpool to the League Cup last year. Could Mizzunu lead Southampton to the League Cup this year? And then for the two Irish keepers winning the League Cup 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
He looks like someone. He even spoke to Sky after the match, and he was like, he's just confident and assured. For a lad of his age, I think probably serves to highlight why Caoimhín Kelleher maybe needs a loan move, maybe in a bit of game time, because Bazzunu's playing week in, week out.
Yeah, and I suppose it hasn't always been that positive for him in the start of his Premier League career. Southampton obviously sitting bottom of the table in the Premier League, so they needed that win last night, and obviously against Man City, who are sitting second, it's pretty positive. And for him as well to come away with a clean sheet, it's brilliant, because I think there was question marks over the last couple of games.
For sure.
Would he lose his place? He just wasn't really on form, and he wasn't tested overly last night. I only got to see the highlights. I was out of the Meath game, but what I seen anyway, he clean sheet, he done well. He'll take a lot from that, a lot of confidence, and the 2 goals.
Sekou Mara, first of all, the first goal. We'll go in order. I mean, the cross was sublime, and then the finish, first time finish for a young lad. I think he's only 20 maybe. And like, he took it like a proper poacher.
Yeah.
And then the second goal from Gineppo was just...
That was all confidence. So that probably came from the first goal.
Yeah.
The way that went in, they're on a high, and then you had to have been full of confidence to take that strike from distance.
Why would you even think of doing that?
Exactly, yeah.
Keeper was too far off the line, possibly.
Yeah, he was quite far out, but you don't expect...
No, you still don't expect a shot like that.
And obviously, if you see that opportunity, you're a professional player, you should take that opportunity. But he definitely did, and unbelievable 2 goals.
Ridiculous. Because we were kind of we were chatting in the show after the show yesterday, talking about last night's games in the League Cup, and we're thinking, maybe not great games. Southampton City, sat in bottom of the league. City could put out the big guns and make this a 5-6-0 game if they want to. Albeit they rested Haaland and De Bruyne from the start, which, I mean, backfired a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah.
I know they brought them on, but no shots on target for City across the entire match, which is rare, to say the least.
And Pep sort of spoke afterwards and said that he felt that before the game even, he knew that they weren't going to win.
Such a thing to say.
Strange statement. I suppose you do get that feeling at times if you're in a dressing room and you're like, yeah, obviously he did, that things are off, or maybe travelling, that sort of thing. But for Nathan Jones, it was a much needed win as well for him. I
think his 3 wins for Southampton as manager have all come in the cup, which is quite remarkable, but serves to highlight their crap form in the Premier League.
Big time.
They're going to need to bring this into the Premier League now for sure, or else they're going to be in serious bother. Just looking at Southampton's first home success over Premier League opposition since they beat Chelsea in August, and only a 6th win since the start of last year, 2022. So, I mean, that's horrific form.
Really is. I don't think you'd be worried about Man City, would you? Obviously, they have the Manchester Derby this weekend, so
12:30 Saturday.
Yeah, big game to look forward to, and obviously coming off the back of that loss, would you worry?
As a City fan, I don't think so.
No.
I mean, you'd expect them to go on, push on, and maybe win this tournament. Newcastle will be looking very, very nicely at this tournament now. Is something they can definitely see as a real opportunity for silverware. And they've Southampton. United have Forest over 2 legs and will be home in the second leg. Newcastle will be home in their second leg, so that's an advantage for the 2 bigger teams as well. I flicked over to the penalty shootout last night as well when Forest knocked out Wolves, and like Dean Henderson was the hero in the shootout. For anyone who's seen this, like there was plenty of shithousery in the shootout. There was like little bits of Henderson wanting to chat to the guy he was giving the ball to, and the away fans were behind the goal. And I mean, players, I think there was like 4 celebrations like this of players putting fingers in the air after they scored their penalty. It was a bit cringy. It got to the Jack Colback did it at one point after like 3 people did it before him, and you're like, Jack,
okay,
relax. It's a bit cringe now.
It's been done.
You're all doing this, like. So it was just to wind up the fans behind the goal, but it was one of those penalty shootouts with a bit of needle to it, and like Henderson looking over to the away fans and giving it loads every time he saved a penalty. Really enjoyable. The bad news for Henderson, he's on loan from United, of course, to Forest, and because they've drawn United in the semi-finals, he can't play. So the EFL rules state that if you're on loan, the parent club has to decide.
Okay.
And I mean, Henderson is Forest's best player at the minute. So if you're United, you're not letting him play this game, either leg. Wayne Hennessy is the backup keeper for Forest, and last time United played them, I mean, he was at fault for some goals, some mistakes. So I think United will be licking their lips, especially when it's a Dean Henderson-less Nottingham Forest. So it's just one of those things that is unfortunate for Dean Henderson, because I mean, sometimes you hear of parent clubs letting the lone player play, just feeling some sympathy for them.
Yeah, and has it been announced yet that if they
United haven't said it. I would be very surprised if United even said anything. They're probably just going to go, no, that's the rules, we'll just stick with that. They'd be quite happy, because of course United want to get to a League Cup final. They haven't won a trophy since 2017, which seems quite remarkable. It'll have been 6 years since they last won a trophy.
Big time.
But no, I really enjoyed the games last night. There was a moment early in the Southampton game where Lianco, I think it was, for Southampton, gave Jack Grealish a bit of venom in a tackle, and you're thinking, Southampton are up for this game.
Yeah, like, big time. They really did. There was a little bit of energy about them,
100%.
from what I see now. But yeah.
And as soon as you give it, like, if you're targeting players like Jack Grealish, you know you're up for the game, because
they look frustrated.
Big time.
Man City, yeah. They were sort of a little bit of talk back at each other, and they were definitely frustrated about what was going on. Obviously 2 goals in the first half.
Yeah, for
Not
sure.
ideal, but
we're getting some of the comments on that game into the YouTube channel as well. Damien says City looked like they expected a walk in the park. I think that's fair to say, and I mean, judging by Pep's comments, maybe he wasn't expecting a walk in the park because he was expecting them to lose. Thomas Hunt says it's Man United's cup to lose now. I wouldn't be so sure. In Newcastle, over 2 legs against Southampton, you'd expect we'll get the job done. A United Newcastle final in the League Cup in Wembley would be something special. Like that's the final that people want to see. It's not maybe the top tier final of years gone by, but all of a sudden there'll be a bit of juice on that. Not to rule out Southampton or Forest causing an upset, because
no, absolutely not. No,
Southampton can beat City, they can beat anyone. John Claffey says, imagine Man City not winning a trophy this season after signing Haaland. I mean, it'd be quite incredible if Arsenal did go on to win the league. They're now knocked out of the League Cup. If Arsenal knocked them out of the 4th round of the FA Cup and they didn't win the Champions League, with someone like Haaland and the money you've spent and the expectation levels that are there.
Yeah, like I'm loving watching Arsenal at the minute.
Right?
Yeah, I really am.
You don't follow a Premier League team. You follow Celtic, but no Premier League team.
I like Arsenal, but I wouldn't say now I don't support Arsenal over.
Soft spot.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, just loving their football at the minute, and yeah, I think Arteta has done a great job with them. They're just exciting to watch.
Yeah.
They're definitely all buying into what he says and the type of game plan, and yeah, they're doing well. And they could go the whole way for sure.
Yeah, wouldn't put it past them. So I was sitting in the warmth of my living room last night, actually watching Monaghan Donegal, and you, on the other hand, were in Ashbourne. Yes,
Donegal Ashbourne, County Meath. It was torrential rain. There was a swirling wind. Yeah, it was Byrne Cup conditions, to put it mildly. But we actually got to sit inside, because the way the pitch is in Ashbourne, there's like a glass inside, like to look out onto the pitch.
Grand.
So you're looking
bit
in.
like Armagh, or no, it's in Oma, isn't it? Where you have the glass looking out in Healy Park.
That's on the far side. I actually have never been over the far side. I'm always in where you get
in the
torrential
cold area.
rain.
Yeah, of course you are. Yeah.
But so it was actually nice. So I can't complain saying about the conditions. But for the lads playing the game, God, very, very difficult. It was 1-7 at 10 points in the end, so it was a draw game. And in the end, Meath had so many chances to level the game. And they were just constantly hitting wide after wide or losing possession, and it was very frustrating to watch. And I'd say for Colm O'Rourke, he was very frustrated on the sideline, but it was that swirling wind, like even though it was at their advantage in the second half, they almost were kicking the ball too high and it would just swirl and take it. So the few times that they actually hit it a bit lower, it actually worked out a bit better. But they eventually got the draw. So 2 draws and a win now in the Byrne Cup. But
okay.
They're out of the Byrne Cup now. It's Longford they go through just because they've 100% record in it. So they go on, and positive for them. Really positive signs. They went for the Byrne Cup. A lot of the experienced players and that came back in, and they wanted to get a lot out of it. And Paddy Christie talked to me after, their manager, and he really has a lot of respect for it. We
actually have some of your post-match audio from that match last night. We'll start with Paddy Christie, Longford manager. Here he is speaking with Aisling last night.
Paddy Christie, a good game out there for Longford. It was a draw in the end against Meath. I suppose you're happy enough to come away with that?
We are, because we felt if we could get to a final, it'd be a great achievement for this group. Not underplaying ourselves in any way, but you're starting off in very small little steps here to try and build something. So to get to a final gives you you can only go as far as Friday in this competition, Friday week. So that's it then. Whether we win or lose, obviously we'll be trying to win, but it gives us those games to build for the National League. And because of the restriction on challenge games for teams before Christmas, it's really, really important to get those games in. I wouldn't know. I'm not going to lie. I would have kept an eye on Longford football over the years, but I wouldn't know an awful lot about the ins and outs of it. And I suppose I brought in some people to try and give me a bit of a background on things. But you learn an awful lot by playing matches, and even in training, we would have felt certain fellas were underperforming or overperforming, and then it turned out in matches it was the other way around. So you only learn that through playing.
Yep, Paddy Christie, the Longford manager there, speaking to Aisling in Ashburn after the draw last night in the Byrne Cup. Aisling, as she said, was also speking to the Meath manager, Colm O'Rourke. Have a look.
The new challenge of Meath manager, was this always an aspiration of yours? Obviously playing for Meath. Did you ever think about becoming the Meath manager?
I did about 20 years ago, but certainly not in the last 10 years. I would have said that's gone, and I didn't apply for the job and didn't look for the job and didn't want the job at this time. And then I had a lot of coaxing from a lot of people. So I'm glad now that I'm doing it. I'm really energised by the players and the commitment I have to wearing the county jersey, because sometimes over the last 10 years people will say the Meath lads aren't committed. Certainly that is not the case. So I think we have a very bright future with a committed group.
And obviously you've a lot of experience on the Sunday game as a pundit as well, so do you have a bit of an advantage having covered all of these teams in depth?
I don't know so much about that. I think the main advantage I have is that I've been involved in club management almost for 20 years. I've been involved with a lot of lads who have come through at schools level, so I know most of the players in Meath, and that's the big advantage I think of going into the job at this stage. So whether or not I'll be any good at it, time will tell, but certainly the players are not lacking in effort or commitment, and I think that's a great starting point.
Yeah, Meath manager Colm O'Rourke speaking with yourself, Aisling, last night. It's such a deep Meath accent he's got.
Yeah.
I know you have a Meath accent as well, but Colm's is like...
Well, people don't say I have a Meath accent.
Really?
Yeah.
It's maybe a Rotose accent though, is it?
Yeah, I live on the border.
There's different sides to Meath, you see.
Yeah, he's obviously way up there, Simonstown.
Yeah, right. Well, that was your first time chatting to Colm?
First time chatting to him. Yeah, it was great to meet him. I always wanted to meet him, obviously, and lovely man, and he's enjoying the job. Obviously I knew that he had aspirations to manage Meath years and years ago. He applied for the job many times. He didn't get it,
famously.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask him, obviously, just for other people that mightn't have known that, and also just to maybe hear about now, how did it come about? Because he didn't go for the job this time, and obviously it was other people that spoke to him and sort of got him to take it. But positive signs there. He spoke about seeing over 300 players, making sure that the best players are playing for Meath. And yeah, you definitely can see that there's definitely been growth, I would say. It's early stages yet, but yeah, you can definitely see positive signs. And Paul Gargan is in there from the Meath ladies as well, so he's a brilliant tactician. His fitness levels, all that sort of thing is high on the agenda, so I can't wait to see what mark he has on the team. And Sean Boylan as well is in and around the setup too, so exciting. We have to do something, surely. Yeah, I mean, with the magic man Sean Boylan involved, you'd have to. Aisling, tell us briefly, you had a very close call in O'Muir Park in Portlaoise recently in the Byrne Cup. You almost had a sleepover in the ground. Tell us about this. Yeah, this was at Fossil versus Castletown in the juniors. Sorry, not the Byrne Cup, the club, sorry, the junior semi-final of the club action. And obviously I went there with the one agenda of meeting David Clifford and getting the interview. So anyway, a lot of people have seen the videos of David Clifford being swarmed on the pitch after the game, and that was the case. And I thought to myself then, no chance of getting this interview here, like no way. But I got lucky enough to get the interview in the end, got into where the changing rooms were, and yeah, David was lovely and he came out and spoke to me. But after the game I went back up to the press area, which I would do at every game that I'm at. I'd go up to the press area and send off my stuff, my notes, the videos, all that sort of thing, back to the guys here at base. And I did think that it was very quiet around the place, but it was a terrible day. So very quiet, Aisling, as it turned out. It was a terrible day. There was a lot of wind, rain, not nice conditions. So I just thought, people are gone inside or whatever else. Now, there wasn't loads of journalists there because it was a junior game, but it was David Clifford. So, obviously there was a few, but yeah, they weren't up in the press area after the game. I thought they might be inside, sending their stuff off that way. A lot smarter than me out in the cold. Eventually, anyway, got my stuff sent, and I went down to go back out through the gates, out to the car park. Realised the main gate was locked. So grand, walked to the next one, that was locked. Walked to the next one, that was locked. And I was like, hold on. I was like, there's no more gates, because I thought it went the right way around in O'Muir Park, but no, it's just the three main ones. And yeah, then panic station started to hit. It was dark at this point. It was hailstoning. And I'm outside and getting absolutely drenched. And I was like, oh God, there's hardly any cars here either. And the railings are 6 foot. And they had jagged edges. Because I was thinking, if I jump on that bin and maybe try to jump over. And I was like, no, you're going to break your ankle. Yeah. Not worth the risk. No, not worth the risk. So I seen in the Centre of Excellence that's next door, there was a tiny light on in the background in there. So I was constantly ringing their phone just to see if anyone would answer. I just Googled the number and no one was answering. So then I thought, okay, I'll start throwing stones at the window. Sorry for laughing here, by the way. But yeah, don't laugh, Shane. It was traumatic. Sorry. So I was throwing stones. I was thinking I'll throw stones at the window, and then I said, no, I'm going to smash the window. No, my luck. So didn't do that. So then I just had to start screaming. So my God. Just imagine you in the car park screaming your head off. Yeah. Well, the headlines could have been worse. Off the ball reporter smashes window with rocks. Well, there you go. But yeah, I just kept screaming, just saying hello, hello. And this man eventually comes to the window. And he's a bit taken back by me at the start, because he's like, what the hell, what's going on? And then he eventually comes down and lets me out, and I think he was a bit like, geez, sorry about that as well. I didn't even get his name, but thank God he came to my rescue. Yeah. Well, we're glad you got out and thanks, safe and home well. 7:50 AM on this Thursday morning on OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Right, going to turn our attention to a big story in rugby, the Owen Farrell story, and to do that we're joined by the BBC's Chris Jones. Chris, this is a bit of a mad one. So it appears, regardless of the ban, that Owen Farrell will be available for the Six Nations for England. So maybe explain to us what happened yesterday and what's going on generally with this story.
Yeah, morning guys, how's it going? Good to be back on. Yeah, it's as always with a high profile disciplinary case, it's pretty contentious. So Farrell committed a high shot towards the end of the Saracens against Gloucester game. It wasn't picked up by the officials at the time, or it was seen by the officials, wasn't acted upon for various technical reasons. Farrell went and popped the match-winning drop goal just to add to the Gloucester fans and players' ire, but he got cited for the challenge, found guilty of making contact with the head, so it comes in as a mid-range offence, which is a minimum of 6 weeks. That then came down to 4 weeks. He wasn't entitled to full 50% mitigation because of his previous ban in 2020 for a high shot, so he got 4 weeks, which can then be scrubbed down to 3 weeks if he completes this World Rugby kind of tackle school, going through some tackle technique with coaches and trying to work on his tackle techniques. So he's looking at a 3-week ban if he commits that. The problem is that there's then this confusion over what games that includes. It definitely includes the next 2 rounds of Champions Cup, and then it also includes the game against Bristol at the end of the month. But that's a game that Farrell would never play in a month of Sundays because he's going to be in the England squad. But the fact is, he hasn't been named in England squads. The panel is saying we can only go off the evidence we've got, which is that the England squad hasn't been named yet. Therefore, these are the games. And if he completes the tackle course, it means he'll miss 2 Champions Cup, 1 Premiership, and be back for England against Scotland, Calcutta Cup, start of Feb.
With my tinfoil hat on, the fact that this ban would hypothetically end before the Six Nations begins, is there a precedent for the Six Nations trying to, I guess, allow these big players and big names to be available for the big matches and trying to essentially make sure that they are ready and not banned for the opener, for example?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything in that. The Six Nations have nothing to do with this. There'll be cynics everywhere who'll be going, this is an RFU kind of stitch up to make sure the Farrell's back. But look, this is an independently chaired panel by one of the most experienced lawyers in the country, a guy who's got no particular affiliation to England rugby and to the RFU. Is he going to jeopardise decades and decades of reputation to try and get Owen Farrell to play against Scotland? I don't think there's anything like that at play whatsoever. I think it's more just an unfortunate quirk and the unfortunate reality that because of the crossover of fixtures that we know dog rugby, the overlap between club and country, you have a situation where a load of England players would miss a Premiership game because they'd be tucked away in camp. However, you've also got a situation where the England squad hasn't been named, so the panel are just going off the evidence they have. In an ideal world, you'd love it to happen like this. The panel to ring up the England head coach and go, look, is Owen Farrell going to be in your squad on Monday? He goes, yeah, of course he is. It's Owen Farrell. The panel therefore go, okay, he's never going to play in that January game, the end of Jan. No England player who's in the starting 23 ever plays in that game. Ever, ever, ever. The odd player may have gone back years ago for game time, but in general, they're tucked away in camp. They never play. And in that situation, you'd go, okay, this game cannot count because Farrell wouldn't have played in it. Therefore, the third game of his ban has to be England against Scotland. That's what would happen in an ideal world, but there's lots of precedent. Carl Sinclair, Nathan Hughes, Joe Marler, the cases a few years ago where clubs have argued that these matches do count, and clubs have argued, hold on, it's not for you to say whether he's going to be picked for England. It's not for you to say how we select our team. It's not for you to say whether Owen Farrell would be involved. So it does put the panel in a pretty invidious situation. I think rather than this being anyone's particular fault or there be someone who cynically wants Farrell involved, it's just one of those unfortunate quirks of rugby governance, rugby structures, which means that Farrell might, and it's not a done deal yet, if he gets named in the England squad, there is the possibility the panel can go, hold on, this doesn't look right. He's got to be banned for another game, not that January one. But at the time of speaking, the panel are going, look, here's the evidence we've got. These are the games he's banned for. And if it means he's back for England and Scotland, that's more of a coincidence than any kind of sinister, deliberate attempt to get the England captain or potential England captain back for the big game.
And Chris, do you think that it makes a mockery of the disciplinary process at all?
I think where the disciplinary process actually is under scrutiny is just the kind of complication of it all. I'm trying to explain here how the ban's gone from 6 weeks or 6 games to 3, then to 4, with tackle school back to 3. All of these bits of mitigation, all of these aggravating factors, time off for good behaviour, time on for bad behaviour, time off for good record, time on for good record. it just probably alienates the casual fan who's going, hold on, can Owen Farrell play for England against Scotland? Yes or no? And the fact is, we think he can, but we still don't know. There is something in the regulations that says if there's a change in circumstances, now England squad selection might not be that change of circumstances, but the panel might have a right, or the RFU disciplinary might have a right to go, hold on, Owen Farrell's been banned for 4 matches down to 3 with the tackle course. He's only going to really serve 2 because only missing 2 games he would have played in. And the RFU do have the jurisdictions then go, hold on, it's a much better look if the ban actually is a proper ban that encapsulates games he would have played in. So I don't know. I don't think it's a mockery of the system in the fact that Farrell's got too lenient a ban. I don't think that's a tackle worth particularly more than 3 or 4 games. There have been a lot worse tackles, getting fewer games, you could have a long conversation about whether there should be sterner across the board. But based on the regulations, based on recent precedent, that's probably around about fair. He's trying to hinge the hips. He's crouching a bit. He's just going in with a bit too much force with his shoulder and a couple of inches too high. But it's not a really terrible tackle that should see Farrell ruled out for the Six Nations. So from that point of view, I think the ban is roundabout fair. But the whole mechanism of how the panel get there, how it's relayed to the public via us, that's all something that definitely can be improved, I think.
I guess that's the confusion really, Chris, isn't it? The how they got there and the mitigating factors that you mentioned, just looking at some of them here. So the panel reasoned 1 bad tackle back in 2016 shouldn't be considered as it happened too far back to see Farrell listed as a repeat offender. And then, of course, there's other his good conduct at the hearing as well was mentioned, and a reference from his coach Mark McCall went in his favour, as did Farrell calling the Gloucester player to apologise. So I guess the mitigating factors is something that has raised a few eyebrows, but I guess that's the way in which the panel got to their conclusion in the end.
Yeah, and those are the laws, those are the regulations. You might not like the fact that pretty much every ban immediately leads to 50% mitigation. You might not like that, and I can definitely understand why people wouldn't like that. But the reality is a lot of bans, the vast majority, do get halved 50% mitigation because of a guilty plea or good conduct at the hearing or a good recent record. Farrell hasn't got this 50% mitigation because of the tackle he made on Charlie Atkinson in 2020. He's not got the 50%. The 6 has come down to 4 rather than down to 3. So anyone going that Owen Farrell, his previous hasn't come into it. That's not true. It has. It's added a week / added a game onto his ban. You could say he needs to go back to 2016. That is a long time ago now. You could say, oh no, it's Owen Farrell. He's always tackling high. He's always tackling recklessly. Well, there is that school of thought, and Owen Farrell seems to wind fans up, especially outside England, like no other player really in this part of the world. However, the panel can't go, oh, he's got a bad rep on social media, let's give him another week. The reality is, or the facts are, he's got 1 ban in his career in 2016. That was retrospective. He's got 1 ban in 2020. He's got this ban now. And it's started to cost him because it's added a week on. And if he commits another one in the next, say, 5 years, which will be the rest of his career, he won't get that extra 2 weeks mitigation. He might get 1 week. It might be aggravating and add another one on. So, yeah, it is ever so slightly catching up with Farrell. I do understand why there's frustration out there that Farrell has got a bit of a track record. But equally, the panel can't just look at the angst on social media and bring that into their deliberations. They've got to go, look, when has the guy been banned? We've got to trust the disciplinary process. Like it or not, the panel just have to go off the process and the precedent. Here's the 1 ban. That doesn't count. It's 9 years ago or whatever. Long time ago, 7 years ago. This one's more recent. That does count. And here's today. So, yeah, I completely understand about the messaging. I completely understand about the process needing perhaps an overhaul. But the panel are only going off what the regulations are. And that's how they've got to this conclusion.
And Chris, do we know what tackling school looks like for these players? Like, I find it quite hard to understand. Obviously, professional players, Owen is 31 years of age, playing a long time, to go to tackling school at this part of his career. Does he learn anything? Does he really change his game?
I suppose it's a bit like us going on a driving course or a speed awareness course. When you've been driving 20 years, you probably shouldn't need to be told how to do that. But yeah, I suppose what we can't, and I've seen this argument made really well across various platforms, we can't lament players' technique in this era where clearly everyone is incredibly conscious of high tackles, of head contact, and of the debilitating consequences of concussions and brain injury. We can't lament technique, and then when there is something brought in to try and improve technique, dismiss it as being, a little bit trivial or a little bit futile. I think on the whole, they're not sitting in a classroom as such. They're going and working with a coach, showing some videos, talking through their technique. I know a few people have done it, and actually the reoffending rate is pretty low. So, I think we've maybe got to give this Tackling School initiative a bit of a chance. I do understand why people are saying, it's just a way to reduce bans, mitigation, tackle school. A 6-week tackle comes down to 2. I definitely see that argument. And I definitely see the argument that it's getting really confusing about what counts as meaningful matches. Unions, clubs have been trying to game the system for ages on this, trying to say, that's a 7-a-side game we're playing in training, that's meaningful. And the panel have to be really, really careful not to fall for that trick. And there have been a few instances in England of a player getting a 2-week ban and then arguing that 2 matches in the same week both count. They've never played in both. So that's something the panel have always got to be aware of. But when it comes to Tackling School, I think maybe we've got to give it a chance. And he is 31. And I suppose on the one hand, we can't go, he needs to improve his technique, but also say, here's something that's come in to try and improve his technique. Let's just throw it out the window. So we'll see how it goes, and we'll see if it has any bearing on Farrell's technique in the future.
Chris, great stuff as always. Really appreciate the time. Thanks a million for joining us.
No problem. Have a good one. Cheers, guys.
Good stuff. Chris Jones there, BBC's rugby union correspondent. It's a fascinating topic, and I know the lads discussed it on Wednesday Night Rugby last night. Gordon Darcy even saying how, and we spoke about it in the production meeting this morning, how he remembers being tackled by both Farrell and Johnny Wilkinson, and how they're slightly smaller in stature than some of the players that you'll be tackling, so they just naturally tackle higher to have more of an impact. You can't, it's not really a mitigating factor either, and yet Tackle School, as you say, it's not going to change his he's technique.
Obviously playing in a way for his strengths of his size, and look, he's one of the best players for a long time at this point. So it's worked for him for an extent, but it's obviously catching up with him a little bit. But I don't know. I just can't see Tackle School really having a massive effect on someone's game at this point in their career.
Yeah, it's funny. I just think the mitigating factors are a bit ridiculous. Every player now knows if you have a few of those things going for you, if you apologise and there's mitigating factors, you can immediately nearly cut your ban in half. So
that's why I asked the question about, does it make it a mockery of it? There's a lot of confusion coming away from it. We still don't know what game he is or isn't going to play. It's not very clear.
Yeah, it's a bit bizarre. 8:03 AM on this Thursday morning's OTB AM. Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of OTB. Start the new year off with a delicious Braeburn oat milk coffee. January never tasted so good. And we're joined after this very short break with the return of You Had to Be There with none other than the Kilkenny legend himself, Tommy Welch. See you in a sec.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
What position are you playing, Sarah?
I'm playing in Katie McCabe's position, so tell her to watch out. And I'm only joking.
All joking aside, is it even part of your dream?
That's like saying, if you had an opportunity to go to the Olympics, would you not go? Of course you'd go. Of course you'd love to go. Of course it would be your dream. Any sports person's dream would be to play at the highest level of any sport that they can get to.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It's so unexpected.
It's one of those you had to be there moments.
You had to be there.
It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life.
You had to be there.
Yes, indeed. It is the latest episode of You Had to Be There, where we have a different person from the world of sport ordinarily to talk about 5 of the sporting moments they witnessed in person and that stuck with them, the performances that stood out on those days. Tommy Welch, Kilkenny legend, good morning to you. How are things?
Yeah, good morning, Shane. Good morning, Aisling.
Good morning, Tommy.
Tommy, your list has got me excited here. There's a few absolute belters in here. We'll get straight into it. So you're kicking off your You Had to Be There segment with PJ Ryan's performance in the 2009 All-Ireland final, of course, Kilkenny beating Tip. This was a man-of-the-match performance from PJ.
It was, Shane, and I suppose thinking back on trying to pick 5 and the amount of games, I'd say probably going to games and training sessions and playing for the last 30 years, probably over 3,000 games and training sessions. So to pick 5 was going to be exciting. So I tried to break them all down, I suppose, to a more narrow, I suppose. And PJ Ryan, I went with the county side first. So it was PJ Ryan and DJ Carey. Now, DJ Carey was the 1997 All-Ireland quarter-final, just quickly. And Kilkenny were getting beaten by 9 points at half-time. And this was when scoring, it wasn't at the heights it is now, 29 points, 30 points. Ordinarily, it was probably 10, 15 points were scored in them days. And they came back and DJ scored 2-8. And he was just incredible to beat Galway below and Thurles. So it was between him and PJ Ryan, but I went with PJ. 2009 All-Ireland final. I suppose the quality of the opposition was just top class. You had Lara Corbett, you had Shamie Callanan, you had Owen Kelly. So, like, who he had to take on to be man the match in that final was just incredible. And I often thank him when I see him for that All-Ireland medal. I say, thank you, PJ. That 2009 All-Ireland medal is your medal. And it was an unbelievable performance, And I suppose it's a great lesson for all young fellas as well. He had to wait and wait. And it was later on in his career when he, made his debut. He had to wait for James McGarry, who was, a top-class goalie for Kenny for probably 10 years. And he waited and waited and waited. And, his persistence paid off because, in American sports, Shane talked about clutch. Like, this was clutch for PJ because he lives right in the Tipperary border. The right in Tipperary, you have to rewind back. We hadn't beaten them previous to that in an All-Ireland final. We played them in 1991. It was my first All-Ireland to go to. Ended in sheer disappointment. Michael Cleary was probably the star of that Tipperary team. Not Declan Ryan, but the Bonners and, Bobby Ryan. So I think it was 1967 when we beat them in an All-Ireland final last. And here was 2009, like I suppose the tension, the build-up, the pressure around the borders. I live in the border as well. It was unbelievable. You're meeting lads down the graveyard. And, the saves, like, you have to say Tipperary hurled brilliant on that day. Only for, I suppose, PJ, it was just top class.
It's funny because, as you say, like, PJ's a Fenian's club man, so right there on the border with Tipperary. And, I think I was reading him speaking about the game afterwards, where he said even as a kid growing up as a Kilkenny youngster, you'd be in your dreams running around even in your back garden, and always when you imagine scoring that winning point in an All-Ireland final, or in PJ's case making an All-Ireland winning save, it's against Tipperary in your dreams, and yet before 2009 there hadn't been a final between the two of you, as you said, for so long, so it must have made it all the more special.
Oh, it was incredible. Because, like, Tipperary had the upper hand on us. Like, that great Tipperary team in the 60s, Hell's Kitchen and John Doyle and, Jimmy Doyle. They were just an outstanding team, that Tipperary team in the 60s, and I suppose they went away for a bit then, during probably the 70s and 80s. So it was only the late 80s Tipperary came back. And then the rivalry, I suppose, was it resurfaced in 91. They beat us again after so long, and we were on top for a couple of years, and to play in 2009, like, I remember in the I was good friends with PJ. I remember in the Crown Plaza before the game. We used to go to Crown Plaza, and this could be probably around 11 o'clock the day of an All-Ireland final at 3:30, and the two of us, everyone went out for a few pucks, and we were the last kind of at the table, and we couldn't even drink our soup. Like, that was the tension that was there. That was the pressure. That was the nerves. But, like, they're good. Like, all sports people will tell you, like, you're probably at your best when you're at your most nervous, because you're just focused. It's so singular. You're so focused on that moment in time. The next ball, you're not thinking about the cup. You're not thinking about the celebrations. You're not thinking about winning or losing. You're just thinking about that moment in time when you have to win the ball. And, myself and PJ just sitting looking at each other, barely able to talk. And we kind of laughed about it as well. And for him to go on then and do what he done then was just incredible. And I was so happy for him, because he put so much into it.
And what was he like, I suppose, as a person, Tommy? He always came across quite understated as a player.
Yeah, no, he was a great character. PJ was great for the one-liners, and, you'd always be trying to be beside him on nights out because you'd have great fun. Like, I went over to Celtic, we went to two trips over to see Celtic play over in Glasgow in Celtic Park, and just great character. As he said, he is quite probably in a group, Aisling, but no more than all the other Johnstown lads, great fun when he gets going.
Your next pick, Tommy, is a fairly famous one, and I'm sure this was a difficult one for you to remember and recall, but Lara Corbett's performance for Tipperary in the 2010 All-Ireland final, of course, the 3 goals in that game, September 5th, 2010, Tip 417, Kilkenny 118 in that All-Ireland final, ruining Kilkenny's 5-in-a-row dreams. Fair play to you, Tommy. You're a bigger man than me, being able to recall this and talk about it.
Well, I hear Michael Byrne before in the intro saying, you have to be there, like, but I wish I wasn't there, you know. So, listen, Lark Corbett, and the 2012, between myself and himself in the All-Ireland semi-final, like, that's often, a reference. And, I'd be a bit uneasy about it because, like, Lark Corbett should be remembered about all the unbelievable performance he put in, especially in Croke Park. 2009 All-Ireland final, he was outstanding as well, even though, we won that day. But Lark was brilliant that day as well. 2010 final then, I suppose, we were going for the 5 in a row, as you said, Shane. The hottest of favourites, 10,000 people at our training sessions. Kerry had, the great Kerry Golden Years team had went for the Bomber, and, I suppose Jack O'Shea, Pat Spillane, Mikey Sheehy, John Eake, and like all the legendary players, and we were the next team to become the team that could, to win it. If that the great Kerry team couldn't do it, that we were going to do it, and we couldn't, and Larry Corbett, was just outstanding, and I suppose tactics changed, Shane, as well. We were used to playing in our position zone defending, and that finally, it just didn't work. He wasn't marking one man, and we were a brilliant team. Like, again, when PJ Ryan, I gave him the nod in the last one because the quality of the opposition were so good. Well, the same with Lar, like he came up against brilliant defenders. He had Noel Hickey, you had JJ, you had Michael Kavanagh, Jackie Thurl, John Tennyson. Like, he was coming up against the cream of the crop and still produced 3 goals in the All-Ireland final. Like, I'd say probably the last person to do it, I think, was Tommy O'Connell from Clare from Kilkenny back in the 50s against Waterford. So, an achievement that was just, surpassed anything probably that had gone on in previous years. And every one of his goals was he had to use a different skill to do it. And fair play to him. He was an outstanding player, and a gentleman off the field. And as Michael Byrne said, you really did have to be there to see that. I'd say as a neutral, it must have been great to watch.
Mad, like, because Corbett started at 11 in that game, didn't he? And eventually moves to the edge of the square. And as you say, someone of the stature of Noel Hickey, to outperform him is quite the achievement. So it probably puts the performance in a bit of context as well, Tommy.
Yeah, it does, Shane. And it wasn't just, say, he was roaming everywhere that day. So it wasn't just centre forward and full forward. He was on all of us, I'd say, different stages. Got probably a goal off probably 3 different fellas. And, Noah McGrath gave a great pass for the second one. Shane McGrath gave a long ball for the first one. And, when I was looking at it, like, just to put it into perspective, like, the one performance that had up against it was Brian Whelan's performance in the 1998 All-Ireland final. Brian Whelan, by all accounts, he was man the match in 5 All-Ireland finals, would you believe, Shane? And an incredible statistic. And in that final, he had the flu coming up to Brian Whelan. And Brian McAvoy, Tots McAvoy was kind of, giving him a roast in the first 20 minutes. Brian Whelan was wing back, and Brian McAvoy was wing forward. So they had to put him up in the forwards because he had the flu. He was so good they didn't want to take him off. He ended up at 1-6, 1-3 from play. And, obviously it was a big shock at the time. Kenny were raging hot favourites that absolutely, trounced him in the Leinster final. But so that's what this Lark Corbett performance was up against, and didn't just pick this one up out of the air. Like, I thought long and hard about it, and he was brilliant that day, Lark.
I'm trying to think back to the goals, but I think it was the second one, Tommy, where there's maybe like 5 or 6 defenders chasing. How he didn't get hooked or blocked, I don't know. He still managed to get the ball away and into the back of the net.
He did. We even trying to hurl at him, Ashley.
Yes, you did.
You were afraid to say it, so it's
that was the first goal, I think. Was it?
Yeah, that was the one. The second half, the second one. The first one was a long ball. He caught.
Oh, he caught. His hands. Yeah.
Second one, Noah McGrath gave him a lovely pass, but this was the Eamon O'Shea kind of, it was his kind of coaching that year. Like, before that final, you go back to the teams of the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. It was all about winning your own ball. It was all about being the bigger man, man v man. Towards Eamon O'Shea brought into this. Why do we have to all, think the same way? Probably looking at other sports. Let's bring movement into it. So back in the day, like, movement was, are you afraid of your man? Stand beside him, That was the you know, the old school way of thinking about hurling, that it was all about being tough and that, but he brought a different way of thinking, a different mentality. So that Tipperary team was moving all the time. They were never standing beside you. So Lar, probably no one's seen him. The ball came into Noel McGrath, he won it. So they were probably all chasing Noel McGrath, but Lar, off he went. And he got the pass and put it in the back of the net. And they learned massively, listen to their interviews after 2010. They learned massively from 2009 as well, Aisling, in that they all went in 2009 to PJ Ryan's good side, which was saving over to the, you know, to his, say, to PJ Ryan's left, as you're looking at PJ Ryan, to his right. But in the 2010 final, they all went the other side. So he had to swing back his hurl to try and save, which would take an extra probably half a second or a second. So I'd say huge thought went into that 2010 final.
I hadn't even realised Brian Wheelahan was man of the match in 5 All-Irelands. A big game player, you'd almost say he's maybe the Part G song of hurling, but we'll not get into that conversation. We'll park that one there. We'll move on. Tommy, you're a man after my own heart with the next one. You've thrown a snooker one in there, which I'm absolutely delighted with. So Ken Doherty, opening your local snooker hall. Let's spend an hour on this one, shall we?
Shane is buzzing here.
Well, I would rather if the man himself was here and was able to give his recollection, because I was kind of going down Shane. I knew, you know, Ken Doherty, world champion, has all the awards and all the achievements that he has done for the last 20 or 30 years. But didn't know, I suppose, a whole lot deeper about the man or about the sport. And so we went down anyway. We were back opening up our local hall there last year, about 4 or 5 months ago. And they were opening up the snooker hall or the billiard hall. And they brought down Ken Doherty, which is a major coup for the parish. So we all turned up to see him and to support the hall. And wasn't really expecting anything other than, you know, seeing a lad pot a few shots. But the stories that he was absolutely outstanding. Just real old school Dublin, you know, the old school Dublin stories. And we were laughing for 2 hours. And about the performance itself, then, like, I was kind of there, and they just asked me, just on the night, I wasn't expecting to play, and they just asked me would I play him in kind of an exhibition. And I was a bit embarrassed, to be honest about it, because, you know, I played probably snooker once or twice in my lifetime. Played a bit of pool, all right, so I was getting up a bit hesitant and kind of didn't really want to play, and because I'd rather for maybe someone that was like you, Shane, maybe loved the game, got their chance to play against Ken. But listen, I got up anyway, and I just kind of half put in a throwaway comment. I said, listen, I'll take 9 or 10 shots and someone else can step in then, you know. And Ken let me break anyway, and so I had my pool head on anyway, so I just absolutely smashed him. Which is not the thing to do when you're playing Ken Doherty in snooker. So with that, he potted every single ball, so I didn't get one more shot.
At least you can say that you played against a world snooker champion, which is impressive enough in itself. Tommy, am I right in saying, I'm after a quick Google there, am I right in saying your birthday is the 5th of May, Tommy?
No, Google is wrong. 27th.
27th. I was going to say, because Wikipedia has you down. I was getting excited there because it said your birthday was the 5th of May, and literally Ken Doherty won the world title on the 5th of May, so that would have been your 14th birthday. But
I think it was due on the 5th of May. I was all right. 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. You probably remember Ken winning the World Snooker title, and you were approaching 14.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like that time, I suppose, you know, you had Steve Davis, Steve Henry. Steve Henry was the king around that time, and I was watching, you know, snooker. It's like Wimbledon, like the tennis. You kind of watch it when the darts. You watch it when the worlds are on. You don't watch it for 12 months a year. You know? And yeah, we were so proud of him that time. Like, you know, for an Irish lad to become world champion was incredible. You know, and you know, we were probably sad at the time too with Jimmy White. You know, them years losing all them finals as well. There was so much stories and so much character to the sport. But definitely, you know, with Stephen Henry, so good and so powerful. Probably like Limerick at the moment in the senior hurling, or, you know, Dublin were a few years ago in the football, so dominant. And to see Ken win that in 97 was, you know, a proud moment for all his Irish. Yeah,
it was unbelievable. Really, really impressive achievement, and one that probably gets forgotten about maybe in the grand scheme of things in history, that we had a world champion in in a sport that at that time was huge. As you mentioned, Tommy, you're coming off the back of the 80s and the Black Ball final in 85 and Taylor and Davis and 18.5 million people watching. So it's not that long after that. I know 12 years on when Ken wins the world title in 97. But yeah, by all accounts, a lovely guy. We had Ronan O'Gara on recently. He was talking about his love of darts and watching the Ali Pali, and he's made a call out to try and get an OTB bus to go over to Ali Pali now in December for a bit of a roadshow. I don't know if you've ever been to the Crucible, Tommy. I've been over a couple of times myself, but maybe in May we could get myself and yourself and a few others on board in a bus and cover the snooker as well.
Yeah, give me a shout. I'd be up for that.
I know it's right in the middle of the championship, but sure, look, you can miss one game for a bit of snooker. There's no risk. Tommy, your next pick on You Had to Be There, the fourth pick, the penultimate pick, is Owen Larkin's performance in the 2011 county final. Talk us through this one.
Yeah, and this was probably one of the toughest, and probably produced the best choice, really. Like I was going back, I was looking at the club scene, as I said, probably 3,000 games and training sessions, big out performances. There was so many of them. Like thinking of the local club guys like Johnny Butler from over the road in Ballycallan, our near neighbours. When I was watching hurling, he was giving performances from corner back that were just out of this world. Like Paul Murphy did for Kilkenny for so many years, like Sean Finn is doing for Limerick. But Johnny Butler was just incredible, and you could have probably picked many of his performances. There was John Marnell, another local club inside town, the Borough full back. This guy was an inspirational figure, Shane, like Brian Lohan. So when he did that, and the whole crowd and the whole team, it probably was like a goal or it was like a pint. Lester Ryan, often spoke about Lester, of what a great leader and captain he was, and influenced probably on me in my later years. Well, his brother Liam was one of the best club hurlers I've ever seen. Like, he always produces 4, 5, 6 pints from Clara, and is still doing it. Not sure what age he is now, 33 or 34, I'd say, and he's still doing it year after year. But the greatest performance that I have seen, and probably in any great inter-county club or any sport even, and that's to take in the Pelés, the Ronaldos, the Messis, was Larkin's performance in that 0-11 county final. To give you a bit of background behind it, Shamrocks, I'd say the Ballyhale Shamrocks would have been probably hot favourites at the time. They had all the stars, the Chad, the Henrys, McFenley, Eamon Welch, Joey Holden, I'd say, was young probably back that time, probably out in the wing. And they were just, Colin Fenley and the Village were, a big town team. Town teams will always have a chance, but Ballyhale hot favourites, and the Village were winning the drawing game. And I think Ballyhale got a late score to draw it, and looked like James Stevens had blown their chance. Replay came then, and Jackie and Colin Fenley, they went off basically, after, I'd say, probably 20 minutes to go maybe, or that. And it looked like Jackie was inspirational at that time. Like, he was just incredible for the Village. Like, no one could come near him. And when he went off, it was like, listen, that's their chance gone now. Ballyhale will tip on. And up stepped Owen Larkin, Shane. And just, he scored 111 that day, probably 1-3 or 1-4 from play. But that probably doesn't do him justice. You kind of, as Verney says, it's just about, you had to be there just to soak it up, to embrace it, to appreciate it. Just every ball he won a free. Every ball he won, he made a pass that ended up in a score, or he scored himself. And, it was just out of this world. And, Niall Rigney was over him at the time, tough character. Niall, he was over the Village. They were a tough team. They played it tough that year. And he was kind of the Messi, I suppose. The Argentina in this World Cup are a tough team as well. And then he was the finesse, Messi. Well, Larky was the finesse, along with the toughness. It was like DJ, like he wouldn't be going around jostling lads or acting the big lad or anything like that. But bravery, toughness, there was no one probably braver or tougher than Larky, or DJ for that matter. But that's the performance he put in that day, and it was just blew everyone's mind, It's
mad how you say, as you say, Ballyhale Shamrocks were the favourites, and yet 120-15 is the final score, an 8-point win for James Stevens. As you say, 111 of that 120 for Owen Larkin is quite a remarkable achievement in a county final replay at senior level. Sounds like the second half was fairly exciting as well, even at the start of the second half. Just reading here, both sides reduced to 14 men. Bit of a skirmish. Jackie Tyrrell and Colin Fenley both sent off by the referee Eamon Mansfield. So the second 30 minutes certainly serving up a bit of a cracker by the sound of things.
Yeah, and him and Mansfield doesn't usually send off on so, he usually lets it flow. But yeah, the two lads went, and like his goal even that day, like he got the ball, and I'd say there was probably 7 or 8 Ballyhale lads around him, and just in he went with Larky. Like he was famous for his little solo run that he just weaved in and weaved out. Like, when Messi gets the ball, he's able to control it, and just like, school hurling, like schoolyard soccer, just no one can take the ball off him. Well, Larky's goal in that final was like that. Like how he got in, and even how he got the ball off in the end, how he wasn't hooked, because I often reference the Ballyhale lads. They are the greatest players and team that I've ever seen to hook and block. Just the skill of it. Never mind the work rate or the intensity, the skill of perfecting the art of hooking and blocking. And they couldn't, and there was about 6 or 7 lads around him. But he went in his little hazy solo run and bounced the ball straight into the corner of the net. And he gave, it was a performance for the ages, really, Shane. And the whole stadium. The way a player steps up in 10 minutes maybe and wins a game. But this wasn't like that. This was like every ball he won. No one could touch
went right.
Yeah. One of those performances, players are untouchable. It happens every now and again.
Even that goal, there was a little bit of a ruck, I think, before that, and it was popping around, and he managed still to get in, get low, get the ball, get out, and they're all chasing him. Just, remarkable.
He was a talented fella, Ashling. Even he's a brilliant soccer player, Larky, and Shane, even the snooker. Like I would, Kilkenny's David Morris. Like David Morris would have been on the pro circuit there for a while. He'd have a few titles there.
Yeah.
An excellent player, and I think Larky played him in a local county final.
In the snooker?
In the snooker, yeah. Larky's a brilliant snooker player, yeah.
Unreal. My respect for Owen Larkin, it was already high, but it's just skyrocketed through the roof, let me tell you.
But you often find with these guys that they're brilliant at all sports. Like wasn't Tom Brady brilliant at baseball? Michael Jordan was brilliant at baseball. These guys seem they can play any sport. Like we were up, I often told a story about up in Carron House when we were training for probably an All-Ireland or Leinster, and we had a bit of downtime. We used to play a few sports, but we had a big penalty shootout. David Hershey used to organise, and we used to get great prizes off Sean Swan from Swan's Electrical there in Carlow, and the prize might be a microwave or a washing machine.
I was going to say, what were the prizes?
Yeah, they were brilliant prizes. Our group was even called that time Swan's Electrical, because we appreciated. They were massive prizes, but they were funny as well. If you win the penalty shoe, you win a microwave. And David Hershey was brilliant. He was brilliant for team spirit and morale, and so he organised that with Swans Electrical. And who won it, would you say? If you're to one guess, who won the penalty shootout?
Between all the Kilkenny lads?
Yeah.
It was yourself, was it?
No, Shefflin.
I was going to say, Henry, all the way.
I was looking for a surprise winner there. I was backing you, Tommy.
No, I was just trying to back. Surprise winner, thanks for that.
You weren't known for your penalties necessarily, but, Jesus, Shefflin's good man from a dead ball, to be fair.
But even when you were saying that so many of the great sports people are good at loads of sports, so what else were you good at, Tommy?
Oh, this was very good at. Jeez, it's just the hurling, I think.
Don't be modest now, Tommy, come on.
I was playing billiards. We had a billiards tournament there. It was 2 weeks. I was playing the local public in Trucker there, and the first 20 minutes, the only scores we got were fouls.
See, billiards, Jesus,
foul the billiards where he actually missed the ball.
Billiards, for anyone who doesn't know, is it's essentially pool without the pockets. So you're talking angles, and you must be a good man for getting a snooker then in the pool. To work out your angles, I suppose billiards is crucial. If you have a billiards background, you're going to be automatically a better pool player or snooker player.
Yeah, the billiards is a brilliant sport, yeah. So I used to play it, say, back in my father's time, and them lads are kind of coming to the top here in this local tournament, They grew up, and we grew up with PlayStations and, computers. They grew up in the local billiards halls and snooker halls, but yeah, playing billiards, so there's 3 balls, you have the 2 white balls, one white dot and a red ball, and you're trying to hit your ball off the other 2 balls, or hit it off one of them and into the pocket. So, it's a brilliant game, and it's fast. Yeah,
yeah, unreal. Didn't realise that. Fair play, Tommy. And the last one on your had to be there list. It's absolutely fantastic. Aisling and myself were discussing this one before the show. I hadn't been familiar with this story. Shane Hennessy, Tuller Owen, under 14 Fela National All Ireland group stage against Mount Sion. Fair to say, Shane Hennessy had his his score and hurl with him that day.
He did. And you know, again, to put it into perspective, regards had it up against, so this is the local one, the Tullaroan one really, and had it up against, the last time we won the county final was 1994, and Liam Keown was just, you know, heroic in that final. The end score was 166 points. We beat Dixborough in the county final. That was the last time we won it. And Liam Keown, the second half, he came out late. He had 2 either bruised ribs or broken ribs, and he scored a point from 100 yards. And this guy was going around kind of like Larky in that 11 county final, diving blocks. He was, you know, blocking lads with his hands. It was just an incredible performance. They all played great that day, you know. And even, you know, my uncle Dick was there, and whenever they were saying they knew they were going to win it, when he was quiet, Dick would have been quiet, but I think he would have got a shot of one of the Borough lads, and just really quietly in his own words, someone heard him saying, "War has been declared," you know. And we went on and they won that final. But so just to put it into perspective, that's what this Shane Hennessy performance was up against. A truly heroic performance in the history of our club. But we played Kilmallock. So do you remember Andrew Shaughnessy used to play for Limerick? He was a couple of years younger than us, so he was really small. And we played, we stayed in Pilltown, who would have been down in South Kilkenny. And the Fail at that time, he went off and stayed it was in Waterford at that time, but we were staying in Pilltown. They were staying, Kilmallock were staying in Mount Sion. So we were in a group of 4, and the top team went through out of the group stages into I think it was the quarterfinals or the semi-finals. So we were the 2 favourites, ourselves and Kilmallock. We both won our morning games handsomely enough. So the middle game, I think, was in Mount Sion, and it was a titanic battle, and it was a draw. So, and Shaughnessy was corner forward, he's brilliant, you know, and went on to be brilliant. Now our lad handled him, Jerry O'Dea handled him very well that day. I'm not sure if he scored, but Shaughnessy went on to be an absolute star. I think during the week, you know, winning Hartley Cups, I think he's back involved with that as well, and brilliant player for Limerick. But that Kilmallock team was a super team. So it went to the last round, and they played first, and they played Pilltown, and they won by whatever they won by. So we were playing Mount Sion then at about 7:30 or 7 o'clock. Dirty, wet evening out in Pilltown, and we to win be 33 points. So realistically, you know, we were kind of, you know, listen, you always think you have a chance, Aisling, but probably we felt it was going to be up against it. And Shane Hennessy scored 11-4. And,
that's outrageous.
So it's just outrageous.
11-4.
Yeah.
Sorry, 11 goals and 4 points.
They needed 33 points, 11-4.
Even 4-11 would have been unbelievable, but 11-4.
11-4, like even, you know, say if you had to win off at half time after scoring maybe 5-3, you'd say fair play to him, he did put in his shift, but to score 11-4, and, you know, I often talk about how matches, they're not necessarily won in the last 5 minutes, there could be one in the first 5 minutes. Well, you know, we went on, you know, to win that Fail against a great Cork team with Kieran Murphy, absolute star again, Michael Cusson, was a great lad that played for him, I think his name was Kevin Goggins, a super Sarsfields team in the final, but we wouldn't have been in that final without Shane Hennessy performance on the Friday night inside, or was it the Saturday? It's a Friday night actually inside in Pilltown against Mount Sion. So, listen, that man, you know, he was brilliant for us and for many, many years. And, you know, even in a relegation final many years later, we played Gorn, drawn match, then a replay. He came back, he was after either being injured or in Australia. And I think over the 2 days, he scored 222 or 224. So, you know, just a great club, man. And, you know, definitely it was a historic moment for us, like, you know.
I was just reading some reports about it yesterday, Tommy. I think it was Waterford's, the former All-Ireland winning goalkeeper, Ned Power. And he spoke about how Walsh took his usual place at full back and marked the biggest boy on the Sarsfields team. The Sarsfields full forward was a human skyscraper in the form of a teenager. The opposing full back was an elf who appeared so laughable out of his depth. After 20 minutes, Power's fears had been fulfilled, the twist being it was the unfortunate full forward who was eaten alive by the little fella. Power noted the name and filed it away for future reference. Tommy Walsh.
David versus Goliath, unreal.
That was great. And it wasn't actually great in that final, but listen, it was nice to hear them things, you know. I think, he mentioned my grandfather as well, so my mother was delighted with that, so... Yeah, it's super days.
Unreal. Tommy, your picks then in the books for You Had to Be There. PJ Ryan, 2009 All-Ireland, Lark Corbett in 2010 in the All-Ireland, of course, Ken Doherty opening your local snooker hall, Owen Larkin's performance in the 2011 county final replay, and then of course Shane Hennessy's 11 goals and 4 points just in the under-14 Féile National All-Ireland group stage against Mount Sion. Tommy, great stuff as always, brilliant picks, thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks a million.
Thanks, Tommy.
Great stuff, Tommy Walsh there.
It's one of those you had to be there moments.
You had to be there.
It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life.
You had to be there.
8:36 AM on this Thursday morning's OTBAM. Some brilliant picks there.
Brilliant. How we can go into so much detail
under 14.
Under 14. That's what I was thinking when I seen the list. I was like, I've been to Féiles. Have you been to Féiles?
I was never at a Féile, but
but
I don't know how, even if I was.
Yeah.
Can't remember what I did last week, never mind under 14s.
I can't remember. Féile was one of my best memories. I've been to maybe 2 or 3, but I couldn't remember the teams I played, really. He knew each team, what he had to do, how much they had to win, just unbelievable. But it's just Tommy Walsh.
It's amazing.
Just Tommy Walsh.
And
Jeez, something else.
I didn't realise Owen Larkin was a snooker player either.
That's what you took away.
That's why I'm going
top
home
of the list.
Delighted. It's like Ronan O'Gara loving the darts, and even Tommy playing billiards up to now. That just blows my mind.
Yeah.
All this sort of stuff. So amazing stuff. One of my favourite You Had to Be There episodes. They're all great.
Absolutely was, yeah. It's brilliant. I love to watch them, but unreal. But now it is time now for Around the World with Shane Hannon.
Time of the week, Ashley.
It is, absolutely. So Shane, where are you taking us first?
So we're going to go on a little trip around the world, Ashley.
Nice.
Hence the name. See what I did there. So this is our new weekly segment. It's probably 4 or 5 weeks in at this stage. We're still going to call it new. Quirky sporting stories from around the globe that you might have missed if you haven't been paying full attention. We're going to start, actually, in Venice Beach, Los Angeles, USA. There's a sport called pickleball. People might not have heard of it, but it's quite similar to tennis, badminton, ping pong. You'll see a video up on screen here. So it's like a much smaller tennis court.
Yeah.
Lower net than tennis as well. Players use these solid paddles to hit a perforated hollow ball. So the equipment limits them to how hard and far they can whack it. But there's clearly not much movement. It's not the same as tennis. Apparently that was an unbelievable score, by the way. You can see the fans going wild in that video that we have up on screen. This sport, pickleball, from the CBS Sports video, it's taken the world by storm. So the marketing of this sport is that it's fun. It has social benefits. It's about meeting up with your mates and having a chat. Now, this is obviously a competitive game that you were seeing on screen there. But
so it is professional?
Yeah, they have this Major League Pickleball now, MLP. So there are top professional players. But I guess it's taken off so much in America because of the amount of people playing it just socially.
Yeah.
People who maybe find a tennis court too big to run around, and that's fair enough. I guess it's a more fun, less limiting example of tennis. Now, it's a lot of elderly people as well.
So I was thinking, if you don't want to do as much running.
Yeah, which is fair enough, I guess. Apparently, it's the fastest growing sporting activity in the US. So I mentioned Venice Beach. This is, of course, beside the famous Muscle Beach in Los Angeles. If you go there now to Venice Beach, you'll see lots of people playing pickleball, apparently. So one of the former champions, former Wimbledon junior champion Noah Rubin, who has switched from tennis's ATP tour to play pickleball, says the tennis court's way too big, way too much ground to cover. Came across the pickleball court and it clicked for me. So some of the figures actually here are quite remarkable in terms of the growth. So almost 5 million people in the US played pickleball in 2021. It's at an annual average growth of 11.5%. Tennis annual growth 4.9%. So it's growing exponentially faster than tennis. The pandemic was probably quite good for it, in that people, could maybe quite easily set up a little pickleball court in their garden. You don't need the massive space to play tennis. So I understand from that perspective. A lot of famous faces getting involved in this, Aisling, as well. So Major League Pickleball has been expanded to 24 teams. Many are backed by A-list ownership groups. So Naomi Osaka and the Wimbledon runner-up Nick Kyrgios have invested in a new Miami-based team alongside the NFL superstar Patrick Mahomes.
So the professional tennis players are actually back in this game.
They're all and you'd expect there to be a bit of rivalry between the two sports.
I was thinking, would they take it seriously? Is there a bit of what is that, There
seems to be, there's elements of that for sure, but clearly if the likes of Kyrgios and Osaka are getting involved, you have another expansion consortium including Tom Brady, Kim Clijsters, the 4-time major champion in tennis. You have LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Eva Longoria, the supermodel Heidi Klum. They're also putting in money as well. So there's 6 events across the US for the mixed gender teams. Prize money of $5 million. So there's money being put in behind this as well. Commercial growth means that there's tennis players switching over. Sam Querrey, who's a recently retired tennis player, notably beat Andy Murray to reach the Wimbledon semi-finals back in 2017. He's probably the biggest name convert. He's going to play in the Major League Pickleball this year. There is a bit of a war between tennis and pickleball. So we mentioned a few of those names that are getting involved, but there is certainly an element of the tennis community that are like, nah, screw these guys.
Oh yeah, I could
taking
see
over
that.
our sport and trying to change it. But the backlash, some of the comments here, Australian doubles legend Renee Stubbs, I will never turn on a TV to watch pickleball. I would rather watch paint dry. Why all these tennis players think pickleball is worth investing in and not the game that made them all the dollars is beyond me. So there's clearly a deep concern among some. A playground in New York City recently banned pickleball. Local media describing months of conflict between players and local parents. The parents saying their children were being driven away from the Sarah Valley playground in West Village and forced action. So this sport is causing a lot of controversy.
Wow,
actually.
yeah.
But, I just wanted to bring people's attention to it and around the world because not everyone is familiar with it.
No, I wasn't familiar with it, no. And that clip that we watched, it was like doubles. Is it singles as well?
Doubles, and I'm fairly sure there's singles. I've only watched doubles matches because
It looks quite hard to do the singles, so like close up, it's tight,
it's
like
true,
to be able
like,
to
yeah,
go over
and the fact
back.
that the racket is limiting it, you can't just whack the ball, makes sense as well. So they've obviously designed the equipment to kind of fit. Invented in 1965 in Seattle, Washington, as we discovered in the office during the week. We were all kind of having a bit of a pickleball discussion yesterday, the day before. So if it ever comes up in a quiz question, pickleball invented in 65.
And does Ireland have a pickleball?
I don't actually know.
Are you setting one up?
Do you know what?
In Monaghan?
I'm gonna research this after the show today. If Ireland has any pickleball teams, get in touch. We'd love to have you on the show to talk about it. And Colin Buhig, our tennis aficionado on AM, clearly not a massive fan necessarily. Is that fair to say, Colin, of pickleball? I mean,
He's a tennis snob, is he?
Name the 2 famous rock stars born in Seattle, he's just said into my ear. Because Seattle, of course, being the place where pickleball was invented. Kurt Cobain.
Boom.
Jimi Hendrix.
You.
I mean,
yes.
Let me tell you, folks, if there's a pub quiz, give me a shout.
Yeah,
because
geez, Shane,
I'm
you're
a good
on my
man.
team.
I'm a good man for a pub quiz, I have to say. That's the first story from around the world this week. So we'll come back to pickleball. Because
Yes.
this is not the last you'll have heard of pickleball in this show.
From the rise of pickleball, and where do we go next?
We're going, Aisling, to Paris. I love the music. It's fantastic. The French Football Federation President, Noah Le Gaulle. Good pronunciation.
Yes,
He's
yeah.
asking
We'll give you. Cameron Hill was.
Cameron Hill, who has lived in France and speaks fluent French. I was like, before the show, how do you pronounce that? He's like, Noah Le Gaulle. And I was like, here.
Say it again.
Noah Le Gaulle.
Le Gaulle.
Cameron, you can let me know if I butchered that, but or else just come in and say it for me. But he's apologised for clumsy remarks he made about Zinedine Zidane's potential interest in coaching the French national team. Who knew there'd be controversy in French football?
Imagine.
I mean, never happens, does it? So this was an interview with French radio. The 81-year-old Le Gaulle, I'm going to stop saying his name now, said he wouldn't even have taken his call if Zidane had been in touch. There's Le Gray on the right of that photograph there with the current French boss Didier Deschamps. Le Gray saying on Monday the comments do not reflect his views. Deschamps has signed a new contract with France until 2026. As of recently, of course, after their run to the World Cup final, where they were, of course, lost to Argentina. Le Gray said, I gave an interview to French radio station RMC that I should not have given because they were looking for controversy by opposing Didier and Zinedine Zidane, 2 greats of French football. I admit that I made some clumsy remarks which created a misunderstanding. Zidane, of course, a fairly top-level manager. Now, what's interesting here, Le Gray says he's never met Zidane. And there in that picture there, you'll see Le Gray in the front row on the right and Zidane on the right-hand side. I found that picture online when I just googled Le Gray Zidane.
Is that real?
Apparently so. Now, when he says he never met him, maybe they were just in the photograph together and they didn't really have a proper conversation. That's Deschamps on the left, of course, and I think François Hollande, the French president, was in that, the ex-president in that photograph as well. Kylian Mbappe got involved in this, actually, which he tends to do, gets involved. There's Mbappe in the photo with Le Gray. He described Le Gray's comments as disrespectful. Then the French sports minister, I'm going to have to pronounce this now, Amélie Oudéa-Castéra, demanded an apology from Le Gray for a shameful lack of respect. She was calling for an immediate rectification following these inappropriate comments. Essentially, he was asked whether Zidane had called him about the French head coach's job, and Le Gray said, I wouldn't even have taken his call. To tell him what? Hello, sir, don't worry, look for another club. I just agreed a contract with Didier. It's up to him what he does. It's not my business. I've never met him, and we've never considered parting with Didier. He can go where he wants, to a club He would have as many as he wants in Europe, a big club, but a national side is hardly credible to my mind. I don't know if that was a dig, him saying that he couldn't, Zidane, manage a national team or France, that he should stick to the club game.
Mind blowing, like you don't touch Zidane. Like
No.
that is just a no-go area.
100%.
No way.
And Nola Gray has yesterday stepped aside as president of the FFF just days after making these comments, so he's kind of taking a back seat. Cameron Hill has joined us in studio as well. Cameron, please, can you please just pronounce the name?
Nola Gray.
Thank you very much, Cameron. Thank you for your contribution this morning on OTB AM. So it's very handy to have someone like that to just pop in and give us a pronunciation.
So talented here.
If you ever need a Monaghan pronunciation of any names, you can bring me in, or likewise Aisling for
Not
the
me,
Meath
that's
names.
for sure.
Yeah, we'll bring Colin O'Rourke in for the Meath pronunciations. Thank you very much for that contribution, Cameron. That was excellent. Highlight of the show for today for me, to be honest. But that's what's going on in French football. It's a bit of a mad one, and I mean, considering all the controversies in French football over the last number of months, for this to be the reason why Nola Gray, we should just insert Cameron's voice there, but anyway, why he has stepped aside, it's a bit bonkers.
Madness, absolutely.
So yeah, just the fact that Mbappe got involved as well. But yeah, that's Paris.
From Paris then back to the USA.
Back to the States, actually. There we go. So let me just find my notes here and see where exactly we're headed. We're headed to Palm Beach, Florida, USA.
Nice.
So lovely hot climes, but not a very lovely story, it has to be said. So the 9-time major winner, golf major winner that is, Gary Player, has been involved in a very bitter dispute. There he is on screen, pointing the way. But this dispute involves family. So his son and his grandson, and it's all over memorabilia. It's quite pathetic, but it's taken a legal turn now. So Player, of course, winner of 9 major championships, as I said. He's suing his son there pictured in the photograph, Mark, alongside himself, and his grandson as well, over memorabilia that they have either sold or tried to sell. This is according to the local paper in Palm Beach, the Palm Beach Post. Memorabilia supposed to be returned to Player, according to the report. Back in August, Gary Player announced that his son Mark had put, quote, several trophies and other pieces of memorabilia up for auction. And he released a statement to say, I would like to draw the public's attention to the fact that several trophies and other pieces of memorabilia that form part of my legacy have been put up for auction by my son and ex-manager Mark. These items belong to me, and I've taken action to recover them. I have placed no items for sale, whether by auction or otherwise. So these pieces of memorabilia that Mark and Mark's son, Player's grandson, have been held in 19 lockers in South Carolina. So this is, it sounds like a movie, some of this crack.
And obviously a lot of stuff if there's 19 lockers.
100%. You can imagine the amount of things, and I mean, some of it is probably priceless in that it means a lot to Gary, because you look back on his career and there's little moments and bits of memorabilia that stand out for him. But
why is it all in lockers? Why is something at his house?
It's a very good question. Maybe there's so much of it that he just can't hold on to all of it, or maybe Mark put it all in the lockers and now Gary wants to access. It's just a big messy one. So it's being alleged that Damien Player, who is the grandson, solicited buyers for the memorabilia and sold or helped to sell Rolex watches for, quote, significant sums of money. So some of these items that were already sold in 2021: Player's 1974 Masters Tournament trophy, his South African Open trophy, his 1965 US Open irons, his clubs, his golf shoes from his 52nd Masters Tournament, all already sold in 2021. And this is a last resort, bringing legal action apparently. So he says, Stuart Singer, in fact, Player's attorney, says, only with the greatest reluctance and after many years of trying to avoid this did Gary have to enforce his rights in this way. So the suit against Damien Player was originally filed in November in Florida. It's still ongoing. Player, of course, considered one of the greatest golfers of all time, one of just 5 players as well to win a career Grand Slam, something we'd love to see Rory McIlroy do by clinching the Masters this year. But really, really messy one.
It's so sad, isn't it?
Well, there's family involved.
Yeah, to have won all that, to have such a successful career, and then you hear all this with his family, and you know there's such a divide. So sad.
Yeah, 100%. I remember hearing, like, I'm obviously a massive space geek, needless to say, and there was
well as snooker.
Exactly, yeah, all my little niche mastermind subjects. But Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, was involved in different bitter legal disputes with members of his family as well, over bits of memorabilia and autographs and flown items and stuff that he's had in his collection. So certainly Gary Player's instance is not a one and only. You know, there are many of these instances where sadly, when money's involved,
they're just trying to cash in.
Exactly.
Really.
100%. Yeah. Look, you'd love them to be able to. I'm just trying to see what age Gary Player is here, but Gary is currently, what age? He's 87. I mean, you'd love to see this be ironed out in the next year or two, or as quickly as possible, because it's one of those things with families involved. They'll all regret it for the rest of their lives. You'd imagine,
big time,
if they can't work this out. So
it takes away from all of that success, doesn't it?
100%.
He probably at this point, like we'd see, I'm sure it brought on a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And at this point, he's probably like, geez, I'd rather have won nothing, and none of this have ever happened.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. One of the greatest players of all time, and for this to be, well, he describes all these items as his legacy. I understand that as someone who likes to collect a little bit of memorabilia. We have something that's actually from.
What do you collect?
We had so I've always collected autographs.
Okay, yeah.
Now I've kind of stopped doing it in recent years, but I still have a massive selection of like sports autographs, astronaut autographs.
What's your best one that you've ever got?
Well, I was over in Vegas during the summer on a bit of a road trip with a few of the lads, and we went to Gene Kilroy's house, who's Ali's manager, and our former business manager, Muhammad Ali, and he gave me a glove signed by Muhammad Ali, which, I mean, that's top of my list.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a snooker cue signed by Ronnie O'Sullivan and Jimmy White, which, I mean, for me is up there.
Yeah.
But an Ali signed boxing glove is just straight from the desk of his manager.
My God, yeah.
That's top of my list.
I was trying to think of one that I might have that of known on that level.
Right,
absolutely not. But I remember it was the open of my GA club in Ratoath, and Meath were playing Mayo.
Yeah.
And I was obsessed with Ciara MacDonald. But I actually had.
You didn't ask for his socks, did you?
No, I didn't go that far. Jeez. But no, I absolutely loved him, and I actually had a game that day. We were playing an under 12 blitz in Carlow for me that day, and I was going to miss the game. So everybody knew that I loved Ciara MacDonald, and I came back after the game and I had 12 signed autographs from Ciara MacDonald. The 12 different people
oh my God.
had ran up to him, and it was like best wishes from Ciara MacDonald to Aisling. I was like, I have all of them.
Yeah, he's like, who is this Aisling girl looking for 12 autographs?
12 different Aislings.
Yeah, do you still have them?
Still have them.
Class.
Yeah.
At least you held on to them.
Big time. Yes.
It leads us nicely into the last.
Yes, we're staying in the USA.
In the USA. It's USA heavy around the world this morning, but so be it. We're heading, Aisling, to San Francisco. The Darwin Awards are awards handed out to people who have maybe been killed in stupid scenarios. Luckily, in this instance, this fan that I'm about to mention was uninjured. So an overzealous San Francisco 49ers fan taking quite the bump after a win last weekend over the Arizona Cardinals to end the regular season on a 10-game winning streak. So, I mean, it's good times for the 49ers. They're going well. Their quarterback, Brock Purdy, was running back into the locker room. He threw a towel toward the fans who were still in the stands at the Levi Stadium. And there's one fan in particular who tried to reach the towel with his left hand while on the edge of the railing. We actually have a short video of this incident here. So you'll see the towel being thrown first of all. Bump. Here's the fan. There he goes. Gone. Now, the fall isn't too bad. Luckily, as I said, he's uninjured. But to say, the guy turned around and laughed as well. So clearly it's not that serious if people around him are laughing. So there's the towel. Thinks he can get there.
I
mean, he's gone. So, but misjudged how far away the towel was, clearly. The momentum carries him over the handful of other fans as well. Appears to knock down a couple of other people on the way, so just causing a little bit of carnage in Levi Stadium. So Purdy threw 3 touchdown passes in that game, 30-13 win, 6th straight game that Purdy has had multiple touchdowns. The whole thing is a bit bizarre, because adults looking for a sweaty towel off a professional, also an athlete, an adult sports person. We were talking before the show, Aisling, about these kids who hold up the signs at matches. Can I please have your shirt?
Mm-hmm.
When I see adults grown. And I'm after saying that I used to collect memorabilia, so look, no judgment as a kid, and no judgment here.
And you can still do that as an adult, but this is extreme.
I mean, it's a sweaty towel, like.
Yeah.
Now, look, some people, again, it could be financially based. You think I'm going to grab this towel and sell it on eBay. George Purdy's playing really well at the minute.
Yeah, they're just smart. They're just smart.
100%, but it just makes me sick.
In.
Makes me sick to my stomach. Listen.
This is why you asked me about the socks, because this is what I've heard so many times.
Bizarre.
Running on after a game trying to get interviews, and I hear the kids beside me asking the players, can I have your socks? I'm like, socks? And the players are just like, no.
Yeah, I mean,
you're not having my socks.
Smelly socks, get away from about me. I mean, just don't. So that, Aisling, 3 out of 4 in the States, but a few of the stories that I feel people might have missed this week.
Enjoy
them. So unexpected.
It's one of those you had to be there moments.
You had to be there.
It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life.
You had to be there.
I mean, it's not you had to be there, but it is around the world with Hannon. But still, it's a segment that we're going to continue with. John Duggan has joined us in studio. John, good morning.
Shane and Aisling, how are we doing?
Good morning, John.
You're not someone who would clamber over a fence to grab a sweaty towel off a player, are you?
I think it's probably the last thing I do, to be honest. If you know me at all.
Yeah, that's it's hardly surprising, that answer to me. You are someone who's collected a little bit of memorabilia over the years, though, to be fair. The programmes, I often see, especially at McKenna Cup game and Byrne Cup games, where the programme isn't the actual properly put together programme, it's the paper programme.
Yeah, that was last night.
And it gets all soggy and what's
hard
the point of it?
That.
But you see, I hate when people, championship matches, the programme that's probably worth, you pay your £3 or £5 for it, a lovely put together programme, people have put hours into production of it, and you see the old fellas, using it to cover their head from the rain.
Where is this going?
It destroys my happiness, John. It really does.
When you've reported on different sports, John, do you keep the programme? Is it something that you'd go home with?
Programme is the anticipation. Tickets are the memory.
Tickets.
Oh.
So I keep the big tickets.
But if you don't have a ticket, if they don't give you a ticket?
Oh, it's rare now. I know what you're saying, because now more in contemporary times, sometimes you don't get the ticket. So I will occasionally keep a programme for a big thing. I have a very select few programmes, actually. Like I have the Roy Keane programme from the Holland game.
Class.
He's on the front cover. I actually wasn't at the game. I was working for 98 FM, but my friend of mine gave it to me. So that's in pristine condition. I'll have the 1991 FA Cup final programme. Spurs last won the FA Cup from Wembley. Once again, I wasn't at the game, but
great to have the programme though, yeah, for sure.
When Clare won the All-Irelands 95, 97, kept the programmes for those games. Kept the programme for the 125 year anniversary of the GA, those finals in, I think it was 2009, kept those ones.
Brilliant.
Kept the dubs when they won the replay against Kerry. So I've kept a select few programmes, but all the big tickets are all in the drawer. There's one drawer I have with everything in it.
Yeah, so there's ever a house fire, just grab everything in those.
Grab the box.
Yeah, grab the box and run.
So autographs wise, I had Glenn Hoddle's autograph in a napkin given to me, and I mislaid the napkin when I was young.
Oh no.
And then I had Paul Gascoigne's autograph on a Spurs team on a sheet of paper, and I put it in a frame and I put it on my wall, and then over the years the sun began to fade.
Discoloured it.
They just began to fade.
Oh god.
The autograph, so it's almost like the Back to the Future thing. So I would advise anybody who's got any autographs, don't put it in a frame in your house. You got to have it kind of put away somewhere.
There is a tip for people, as someone who's collected autographs for years, you can get museum quality glass. Slightly more expensive, of course, but if you put it behind that, the autographs or pictures don't fade. So you'll pay a little bit more for it, but if the autograph is unbelievable and you want to display it, or if there's a picture that you don't want to fade with the sunlight, either display it somewhere where there's no sunlight directly facing it, or get the slightly more expensive glass so it doesn't fade.
You have that, Shane.
Yeah, word of advice. Yeah, 100%. A couple of the quick texts in. Mark Dunning says, is Parchy Sung going to get a mention here? And Dara O'Toole says, is Shane the Parchy Sung of OTB? Well, Dara, thank you so much for that compliment. That is unbelievable that you would say that to me, because Park is a serial winner, a man who performed the job day in, day out, 4 Premier Leagues, 1 Champions League title, over 100 caps for his country, took South Korea to 4th in a World Cup.
You still got that shovel, do you?
I'm just trying to dig away here, John, but I mean, Dara, that is, people have said some nice things to me in the past, but to say I'm the Parchy Sung of OTB, that's something else. Thank you so much. That's a massive,
what I'm fascinated by, because you had Charlie Woods last week will win a major before Rory, and you had Park G Sung this week. What will be next week?
Oh yeah, that was a statement. Yeah, I heard that. Said Shane, come on.
But he's 13. I mean, I think he could win it by the time he's 21. We've got 8 years to prove me wrong. So hopefully we'll come back on air in 8 years.
I'm waiting for next week's one, Shane.
Yeah, exactly. There's been a bit of news, surprising in some ways, John, but Davey Russell gave a U-turn in his retirement.
Well, Jack Kennedy is going to be the number 1 for Gordon Elliott, you would expect, and he broke his leg, unfortunately, again last weekend. So Davey released a statement last night through his Twitter to say he's going to come back ride. Rode his last winner, we thought, at Thurles just before Christmas, but is obviously still fit at 43 years of age, and he's going to help out Gordon Elliott. And I think Elliott, turning to his experience for the foreseeable, he'll be back at Ferryhouse in Punchestown this weekend, and then Cheltenham is probably on the horizon now for Davey Russell. So I was kind of trying to think of sports stars that have come out of retirement. I can't really think of anybody as quickly as this. But
this was days, wasn't
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady's one. Yeah. DJ Carey, I remember in the 90s, quit and then returned and won All-Irelands. George Foreman left boxing for 10 years and came back and won the world title with that amazing knockout of Michael Moore in 1994. You had Brian Corcoran for Cork, came back and played as a forward after winning an All-Ireland as a defender in hurling. Paul Scholes, I think, did it briefly. Michael Jordan, obviously. Bjorn Borg came back and played tennis with a wooden racket years after he retired. So there are definitely examples in the past, but I don't know, I can't really think of anybody as quickly as this.
Column tennis player Maria Sakkari retired for 4 days and returned. She revealed that in Breakpoint, this new Netflix documentary, which is out tomorrow, I'm led to believe. Paul Scholes, didn't he was wearing number 18 for United, then he came back wearing number 22. That was a full-on football retirement, wasn't it? It was, yeah. So he came back to help out for a number of months. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you come back out of retirement and it's brilliant. The pressure's almost off.
Never go back, as they say.
Never go back.
No. I never went back to my old school. Once I left school, the secondary school, never went back to it.
You never visited it?
No.
Really?
No.
Why?
I'm an unsentimental chap.
You strike me as a sentimental man, John.
Yeah.
With that, I just never went back to the school.
I remember a few years ago, going back to my primary school for it was a cake sale. Myself and my mum decided to go up. I just wanted to see what the old primary school looked like, St Mary's in Monaghan Town. And then the SEM, I've been lucky enough, you might have done this as well to your old school, where you go back and talk to, I was speaking to, I think, 4th years and 5th years.
Oh, I saw media. You did that. That was lovely, yeah.
It was an amazing opportunity. The St McCartan's College in Monaghan Town, the SEM. And eerie to go back, and then they took me into the staff room for a cup of tea, and I'm looking around at all my teachers. I don't care what age
you are, that doesn't get it's still weird.
I was calling them all by their first name as opposed to their Miss whatever or Mr. whatever, Sir. It was bizarre. I was like, am I allowed to call these people by their?
But you're going to be the chieftain of Monaghan anyway, Shane.
The mayor. I'm looking for the mayor.
He is already.
Yeah, I'm looking for the star.
Mayor Hannon.
Yeah. Well, you were Mayor Duggan on Twitter yesterday, John.
Yeah.
What was the take that went viral?
Just pull it up.
Oh, I don't think I've seen this.
There was it wasn't the budget. It was there
was this story that they're putting 12 cent on the price of a pint of Guinness.
Yeah.
And obviously they're going to round that up. And I don't really blame the publicans for this. The beer companies are making millions in profits every year. So I just said all pints of Guinness in Ireland should be fixed at $5. #Mayor Duggan. And it went a bit haywire.
Many views or impressions?
267,000.
Oh my God, John.
So
don't touch our Guinness. I think people are.
It's not as it was nice to get a nice tweet after the controversy over what Lionel Messi was wearing at the World Cup final, and also saying that
the greatest moment in sport.
New Zealand was the greatest moment since 1990 in my fit of passion after the All Blacks win. But it's funny because I'm getting some people are going, well, so it's 450 down in the country and you're expecting us to put another 50 on, or it's 390 where I am in Kerry expecting this and that, whatever. But
Dublin is just,
if you're living in the cities, Dublin, it's paying €6 for a pint of Guinness is blasphemy. It's our national drink, obviously responsibly as an alcoholic drink can be, but it's our national drink, and you don't want to. I don't know if you want to be seeing pints of Guinness €7-8 in the next few years. I don't know if something can be done. What's
a reasonable price for a pint in Dublin? I suppose it's.
I think a fiver. I think a fiver for a pint of stout, and I think €6 for a pint of lager.
Is that what you pay though?
Yeah.
You pay more. You're generally paying $5.50 now for a pint of Guinness.
I think in Meath, I think it's 4 something.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Like
470, I think in Monaghan.
70 or 80. I think it's 480, something like 480.
Yeah.
I should know. God, I worked in a bar for a long time.
It's lovely when you go home and you get out of the pail and you order a pint of Guinness at home, and they say, and you get change from a fiver.
Yeah.
You hand them a fiver note and they give you 20 or 30 cent back. You're like, this is.
Now that I'm thinking,
mad.
When I did work in the bar, it was 420. That's not that long, a few years, 420. So it's gone up a lot over the last number of years, I'm guessing.
It's even gone up from there.
So
I think, John,
psychologically, at the end of the night, you could be like a tenner better off down the country than you could be in Dublin.
Spectre Corp says it's like $5.30 in Harold's Cross here. I mean, that's not too bad for Dublin.
I think $5.50. As I said, it all should be a fiver. The mayor has decreed that, but if you're going over $5.50 for a pint of Guinness in Dublin, I think it's bad.
Yeah, I'd vote for you as mayor of Dublin, John.
Yeah,
Lord Mayor of
free
Dublin.
scarves for everybody.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, that's a nice
you'd be good you'd be good on the podium as well. Obviously, experience in broadcasting and the Gaelic School of Acting as well.
Yeah.
DJ Mike Anderson, Spectre Corp comments as well here.
You'd have a few rousing speeches, and we'd solve the housing crisis, wouldn't we? with a magic wand. But yeah, so that was
Davey. So he's back in action on Saturday.
Ferry House, and
God,
Punchestown on Sunday. So great to see him back in it.
He's going to have a big Cheltenham, isn't he? It's just written in the stars now.
Well, you hope Jack is fit to come back.
Well,
but if Jack's not fit, like Davey's got the experience, and Gordon Elliott's got a big arsenal of horses. So look, you just hope Davey now when he returns, because he came out unscathed and he finished with a winner. So I just hope that everything is fine for him and there's no falls or that, and he can ride some winners, because it's a sport that's not without its dangers,
for sure. Any other bits and bobs happening this morning?
Well, obviously Galvin Mizzuna was great last night to see him part of a winning Southampton team against Manchester City. I think with City, one eye is on the derby on Saturday. We have that obviously be on Football Saturday on the discussion. David Myler will be joining us on Saturday afternoon to reflect on that with the lads. We've got Leinster-Gloucester commentary, by the way, Saturday morning, 1 to 3. We've got Leinster commentary. Forest Man U kind of repeated the 1992 final in the semi-finals of this year's League Cup. Graham Potter is already really feeling the heat, I think. The fact that he's meeting Thiago Silva, Mateo Kovacic, Cesar Azpilicueta and Jorginho for kind of a clear the air senior player rally round thing is not a great sign to me. I think it's the supporters that really have the gripe. Maybe not so much with Graham Potter, but the fact that they got rid of Tuchel so quickly.
Yeah.
A Champions League winning manager, and doesn't seem to be a kind of a relaxed environment at Chelsea at the moment. It's be fascinating to see what happens against Fulham this evening. And then you had obviously lots of the GA competitions. I know, Aisling, you were at Meath, Longford last night. So we'll see what happens in the Byrne and McKenna Cups. But that's what's kind of going on this morning. Not too much.
There's a bit of awkwardness around the Byrne Cup, because some counties are taking it seriously and some aren't. It's getting to.
Well, I think Liam Kearns was right in what he said about the integrity of the competition.
With teams pulling out because of the Sigerson
and then he's got lots of matches to play that they're fulfilled, and then Longford are in the final and they're not in the final. I've put this on the record before. I don't think these preliminary competitions should exist at all. I think you should start the league earlier and have more time for the championship if you're going to cut the championship by the end of July. In my view, I don't really see the rationale behind. I can see that it's good for fringe players and squads and players trying to give them a chance, and that this is the chance to give a chance without there being too much exposure.
Can you do that in challenge games?
Yeah, you can do it in the league. You know,
what, trial players?
I bet you to a degree. I think.
You're trying to stay up in
league is championship now, nearly, isn't it? Like,
league is not championship. Well, no, I'm not going down this road again. No, but we've had this before.
The way the setup is now, like, teams have to. I mean, you want to stay in Division 2 for a start, and then you want to push on and try and finish as high as you can now because of the championship structures. So
I just don't know why they can't start the league now.
Cup. Like last night, there was a few players for me that were there watching that weren't involved, whether they're just having a rest or they are involved with their college, which I'm pretty sure that was the case. So they can't be involved because it's too much.
Yeah.
But even the likes of Paddy Christie, the Longford manager, you know, he's managing DCU as well, so he's even trying to juggle, you know,
busy like
both. But yeah, there's almost too much on all at once, and but then the McKenna Cup has such a good name as well. Then I don't know, it's
big following as well.
Then you'll have 5 months of nothing.
Yeah,
that's
the
this
thing.
is it.
Well, you'll have club games, of course, as well.
No, but in terms of the intercounty game,
yeah, for sure.
I just think you can still have the split season, but with a better way of solving this fixture congestion, I think.
Yeah, feels like we're
definitely not been solved, and will it ever be? There's too many competitions, probably.
Yeah. You feel like year on year they're getting closer, but still not there.
Yeah,
unfortunately. John, great stuff as always.
Mind yourselves.
Thanks a million. 9:08 a.m. on this Thursday morning's OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs. For an effortless finish to your day, here's what we've got coming up on OTB Sports Radio across the day. 1 o'clock, it's OTB Gold with Barry Ryan on the Ascent. 3 p.m, it's Leaders' Questions. 4 o'clock, a retro panel, Ireland versus England 95 memories. From 6 p.m, it's OTB Gold, Michael Conlon after his exit from the Rio Olympics in 2016. And from 7 p.m, the show is live this evening off the ball with Nathan alongside John Giles and Brian O'Driscoll. Star-studded lineup there, plus plenty more besides. You can follow OTB across all our social channels and subscribe to the OTB podcast network as well for all the best in the latest sports content. During the break, you will hear a clip from the latest episode of the Club Championship show on OTB Sports in association with AIB. Proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Check out #TheToughest for more. Hosts Will and Aisling, of course, here discussed Aisling's own post-match interview with Fuss's David Clifford over the weekend that went viral across Off the Ball's social channels. We'll be back afterwards then with the sports pages. First, though, we have some Thursday morning motivation from GMAC.
Testing 1 2 1 2. GMAC 1 2. GMAC's morning motivational moment, or something along those lines. There's so many to choose from.
Good morning, Graham McDowell here. GMAC, as you guys like to call me. Some Thursday motivation for you now. To shine your brightest light is to be who you truly are. Who is GMAC? I don't know. He's Irish. He plays a little golf, drinks the odd beer from time to time, and likes to hang out and just kind of be himself, really. That's your Thursday motivation. See you tomorrow.
GMAC's morning motivational moment, or something along those lines. There's so many to choose from.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Red 78.
It's going to be a bit of a lottery from the scrum point of view. They are incredibly strong.
Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
Look, the stats sometimes can be skewed. You can have lower possession than the opposition and still win the game.
I can't believe you've been positive for 3 weeks in a row. It must have been something that's so out of your mindset.
Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
Even to get an interview for me, it was the toughest thing I've done in a while. Like, I obviously went there with an aim to get the David Clifford interview, and I remember I was running around and a few people turned to me and they said, "You're fighting a losing battle here." I was like, "Yeah, I know." And I was running from one way to the other way, and I actually had learned at O'Moore Park that the changing rooms up the far end, they actually go out through the tunnel and then out to the bus this way. So I'd learned that from the Kilcoo game last year. So
good market research before you went.
But I managed to get in anyway inside, just outside the changing rooms, because there was a mob waiting for him after the game as well, like obviously immediately after, but then even when they came out of the changing rooms, you know, there was a lot of stewards all sort of waiting around trying to get him out, but thankfully I just asked one of the guys from their club, you know, if at all possible, but like I don't want to put any pressure on him, and I'd say within 2 minutes, well, he walked out of the changing room, said, "Oh yeah, no bother." I was like, jeez, didn't think like after there was about 100 people, 200, 300 people trying to look for your autograph and selfies and everything else that he would. But no, lovely lad.
Also would be perfectly understandable if at this stage he's had a long year, lots happened, he's done
a
million interviews over the last year for various different reasons, because of, you know, being footballer of the year and the fact that Kerry had, you know, got themselves a title what felt like a famine before they broke it this year.
Yeah.
He's probably worn out talking about success, but still he enjoys talking about his club.
Yeah. And you could see that when I spoke to him, like he sort of lit up with all of that, you know, that he's back in with his club, and it's really nice that he thought that there was a chance that this would never happen. So yeah, you can definitely feel that from him, and I think it would just be the cherry on top now if they could go the whole way, and I'm sure that's how he feels, because what he's won this year, I didn't want to list out everything that he had won to him, but I'd be there a while, because it has been one successful year for him, and I know we're in 2023, but you know, it is the 2022 season as well, and this would just be, I think, cap it all off of the most successful year possible.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Did you pick this music?
I feel like, Emma, I love it. I mean, I feel like I'm on a really serious news show now, so I should put on a pair of glasses and put on a straight face and
take it away.
Be very serious. So this is the newspaper headlines this morning from the back pages. We've got the back page of the Sun. Saints alive, Pep's shocker. Of course, Southampton beating City in the League Cup last night. Bridge repair. Potter holds crisis summit. Graham Potter, as John was saying, has had crisis talks with 4 of his senior stars as he fights to end a Chelsea slump. The new £14 million low signing Joao Felix joining a team in free fall with only 1 win in 10 domestic games, and they face a West London derby at in-form Fulham tonight. Huge game for them as well. So Potter met with the first team leaders Cesar Azpilicueta, Thiago Silva, Jorginho and Mateo Kovacic in a bid to try and plot a route back to winning ways, of course, following their back-to-back defeats by Man City. And top corner as well, girl power. Ireland boss Vera Pauw hitting out again at the decision to hand Phil Neville the England job ahead of her back in 2018. So some interesting headlines there from the Sun. The back page of the Mirror. Saints alive, Southampton stunned serial champs as Mara and Gineppo down woeful City. Henderson the shootout hero for Coop. Melting pot, that same story. Struggling Blues boss Graham Potter holding a crisis meeting with 4 senior stars in a bid to beat the slump. There's the Davey Russell return story, and a tiny little bit given to Barrett. Roy Barrett to step aside at the FAI, stepping down as chair of the FAI board, and independent director Gary Tuhig is going to Barrett. Of course, strong supporter and always has been of Stephen Kenny. So a staunch ally of Kenny departing stage left from the FAI. The back page of the Irish Daily Star has similar headlines. Saints clip City wings, Barrett leaving his FAI position, Potter plots blue revival, and Davey Russell. There's similar themes to the back pages. This morning, across the water, the Daily Telegraph, loophole gives Farrell reprieve. England fly half free to face Scotland after reduced ban. Controversy as Steve Borthwick left to decide on inclusion. Calcutta Cup controversy, of course. Scotland up first for England in the opening Six Nations game next month. Suspended yesterday for 4 weeks after making a dangerous tackle during Saracens' Premiership victory over Gloucester. Reduced to 3 upon his participation in World Rugby's Coach Intervention Programme, or Tackle School. Of course, that story that we were chatting with Chris Jones of the BBC about earlier, you can catch that back on the YouTube or the podcast, wherever you get it. And really heartbreaking story from Warren Gatland. You'll see on the back page of the Daily Telegraph sports section, Warren Gatland saying, my daughter died at 4 months old. That's what drives me today. So a heartbreaking photo of Warren Gatland with his wife Trudy and their daughter Shauna in 1992. Gatland believes Shauna's death, having been born with spina bifida, had a profound impact on his outlook on life and shaped his career as well. So a bit of a heartbreaking story in the Daily Telegraph there. We've got the Times as well. Ban loophole clears Farrell to face Scots. Lampard given owner backing. Everton's majority shareholder Farhad Mashiri responding to mounting fan frustration, backing Frank Lampard and the rest of the management structure. FA inquiry into cup spot fixing as well. Suspicious betting patterns surrounding the booking of the Oxford United defender Kieran Brown during Arsenal's FA Cup win on Monday. The last couple here. The Irish Times has a few different stories. Ex-Ireland under-20 McGuigan key to Gloucester reaching ambitions at Rugby Champions Cup. Headlines left, right and centre. Farrell set to be available for start of Six Nations. And finally the back page of the Irish Daily Mail. You've got Keep the Faith. Barrett backs Kenny as he opens up on shock FAI exit. Apparently the fellow directors in the FAI were unaware that Roy Barrett was going to be stepping aside. He said, it's been in my head to go for some time. I don't believe in staying longer than necessary. My position is voluntary and I've given it a lot of time. I came in on January 8th 3 years ago. To be honest, it was a mess. Since then there's been a huge amount of progress and a lot more financial stability. So and then of course the Graham Potter story there. That was this morning's sports pages. I will get used to that music eventually. I love it. Turning our attention now at 17 minutes past 9 on this Thursday morning's OTBAM to Gaelic Games. Delighted to be joined by the now manager of Tyrone's Eden Dork, former joint manager of Kilcoo, Conleith Gilligan. Morning, Conleith. How are things?
Morning, Shane. Morning, Aisling. Things are good.
You're being kept busy, straight from one job into the other. How did this all come about, Eden Dork? So heading into the fiery depths of the Tyrone Championship next year.
Yeah, I suppose like Eden Dork would be, Ballinderry would straddle the Tyrone border, so Eden Dork would be very close locally. So it would have been probably a team and players I would have been watching, because we would follow the Tyrone Championship closely based on our geography as well, and the fact that there's so many games are so exciting.
A number of the Tyrone panellists on the team, including Niall Morgan, who famously plays a lot of the time outfield for Eden Dork. So I'm seeing some similarities here, Conleith, with your own career, where you started in goals for Ballinderry and I moved to outfield. So you're almost the reverse of Niall Morgan's career.
Yeah, and Bobo tried his best. Bobo Kane tried his best to get outfield. We wouldn't let him. So probably there's some sort of symmetry there. But yeah, look, Niall would have played outfield all the time for Eden Dork, and I suppose when you went to watch Tyrone Club Championship matches, is a fine footballer in his own right, as opposed to just a goalkeeper as well.
It's a fiery championship as well up in Tyrone. Ashling, you were reminding me this morning about how competitive it is.
I was just looking back over it. I always known it was notoriously competitive, but I was just looking over the stats, and I'm pretty sure it was from 2005 that it's been a different winner each year, that it is that competitive. Am I right in saying that, Conleith?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and I suppose there's been no team, maybe you have to go back to Carrickmore or Kilkieran from the last team to retain it back to back, and it's that length of time, and there's just nothing between any of the teams, and it's so competitive, and I suppose whenever Tyrone's going really well, some of the teams would struggle more so because they wouldn't have their county players, and and I suppose Eden Dork would have struggled a bit with that there. So look, I suppose I'm looking forward. It's strange because obviously a large part of the last 4 years of my life had been in Kilcoo, and it is very, very strange to think that you'll not be there. And even over the last 3 or 4 years, where we had been getting to the latter stages of the All-Ireland, every Christmas and every Boxing Day was spent in Kilcoo, and it was just strange this year where you didn't have that. And it will take a lot of adjusting, a lot of getting used to, but to be fair, I got a lot of nice messages from the people of Kilcoo, and I suppose it's a place and people that will be very close to my heart, and no matter what I would do ever in the future.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit about that. I haven't spoke to you since you've departed. I didn't get a chance to speak to you after the Ulster final either. So I suppose talk to us about that decision to step away and how you're feeling about it all, because you did spend a lot of time there, had some great memories, so I'm sure it's not an easy decision.
No, look, it wasn't. I suppose it was 4 years, and Richie Thornton had been there too. So obviously Mickey stepping away, like, we wanted to stay on just to make sure that things were stabilised, and we thought there was definitely a team there that would be good enough to challenge for Down and maybe Ulster and beyond. And I suppose it was a case that after 4 years you didn't get over the line in Ulster, and you're close, and you've seen how the Glen are in a really good shout now. So it was more a case just that after 4 years we just felt that the players needed something new and needed something fresh. And look, we would love to have stayed for another year, but we felt that it probably wasn't right for the wider group, and that some fresh thinking and a fresh voice might be the difference in pushing them on again, because there's really good young players, and the older players look after themselves exceptionally well, and I wouldn't expect any retirement. So there's no reason why that team can't push on again and win Down and maybe give Ulster and beyond another rattle, because the players are there, the attitude's there, the infrastructure in the club is geared up for it. So there's absolutely no reason why they won't be at the latter stages again.
Yeah, massive talent within that Kilcoo squad, and no doubt next year they'll be thereabouts again. What was it like, I suppose, after the Ulster final in the dressing room after that loss to Glen?
Yeah, look, it was very difficult. I suppose really you'd have had to went back to the Cora Finn final 4 years ago from that type of defeat, because obviously the year afterwards was the COVID year, which there was no Ulster. So then the next year was Ulster and All-Ireland. So it was a group of players who weren't accustomed to losing big games, and I suppose you get into that with Kilcoo and you always feel that you're going to win the match, and that's regardless whether you're playing well or not, because they just had that innate ability to dig it out and grind it out and find a way even whenever things were going against them. So we knew the challenge it was going to be against Glen, very formidable side. Probably the couple of bounces of the ball that went for us the previous year didn't go, and Glen won the game, and good luck to them. And you've seen just how able they were push on again. Mike Conlon beat them, even though they were kind of below the way they played in the Ulster final. They still had enough and found a way.
It's funny, like I remember the great interview Aisling did with Conor Glass after the Ulster club final, and he was hinting at a little bit of needle between the Glen and Kilcoo players on the pitch. And look, Ulster club football is spicy and feisty at the best of times, but and look, sledging is something that's part of the game now. It was clearly a rivalry that was very, very feisty on the day, which is great to see as a fan, I suppose.
Yeah, the intensity of the game that day, and you could feel it from the stand, and I suppose Aisling was there. Every ball was so keenly contested. Every point, every score, every block, and you could just feel the tension, and sometimes that spills onto the pitch. And obviously losing the game last year for them after extra time, they had huge motivation. Kilcoo getting back to maybe trying to retain their All-Ireland club title. There was so much on the line, and it wasn't just that one day. Like, that's the culmination of work on both sides of years and years, and you sort of had a feeling that day if you could get over the line, you're in with a serious chance of winning the All-Ireland club, and that's what was at stake. And things boil over, and but like after the game, like you seen pictures of Conor Lavery and Michael Warnock with kids at the very end. So look, there'd be a lot of respect between the teams, and I think that's a rivalry that may endure into the future, and that may not just be the last time they would brush shoulders.
That photo of Conor Laverty, I think it was a sports file, maybe it was an unbelievable
Brendan
picture.
Monaghan,
yeah, unbelievable photograph. Just to see in that moment, he still had the dignity to, I guess, give a little moment or two to a fan.
That's actually interesting to bring up. Like, obviously Conor Laverty is managing Down, so
yeah,
Conleith, you are managing Conor while he's managing Down, so a county team. So how was that dynamic?
Yeah, look, Conor was very, very upfront right from the start that he was keen on doing it, and we give him our full support. And like, we'd offer, especially at the start when they just got going, we'd offer him nights off and maybe take breaks, and he wouldn't do it. And like, he had scheduled everything around trying to make everything work, and we would have trained Monday, Wednesday, Fridays generally all the time because of the way the Down League's structured, and we continued that, and Conor continued to train Down then on in between time. So look, I think anybody that was looking in from the outside would have known the type of character Conor is and the bounce they would have got. And like, it's no surprise to me that Down have started the year with 2 wins, and again, the next round they've got the semi-final in the McKenna Cup against Derry, which will be a massive challenge because Derry have been playing stronger teams maybe than some of the other counties. So this will be a massive test for Down just to see exactly where they are, because it's a very competitive Division 3. But the one thing that Conor will bring is serious enthusiasm, serious passion, and not to mention his knowledge of the game and his ability to rate to young players. And he's had these guys at under 21s or under 20s, and they've won in Ulster. So there's an element of belief, and I think, look, it's a great time for Down. I think they will improve where they've been in previous years. Probably has been unfortunate, and maybe sort of some of the managers have been lucky at times because they'd been in Division 2 that was really hard to get out of. And I think Down will be on the bounce. They've done a goal in the Championship, and I wouldn't bet against them to get a win there.
Conleith, I think it was last April, myself and yourself shared a stage on in Monaghan Town for a bit of a championship preview night. I remember I was asking for predictions towards the end, and you were predicting Derry to win the Ulster Championship. A few raised eyebrows amongst the Monaghan crowd, and you know what, you were absolutely right. Malachy O'Rourke was on the stage with us at the same time, and look, you know how difficult it is to win a Derry Senior Club Championship. I mean, just how impressive has Malachy been? I've made it no secret on this show how much of a fan I am, given I'm a Monaghan man. Bit of love there for Malachy O'Rourke, but what he's done with Glen is more than impressive.
Yeah, it is. Look, and I suppose Malachy would have been there with Ryan Porter back from the Monaghan days, and look, he took Monaghan, he put them at the top table where they were that consistently, and they're still there. And I suppose it'd be fingerprints of what he has done still on that team with them players, but even add into that the likes of, Johnny Bradley, who would be at the very top end of sports analysis, and, along with Mickey McCullough, who I'd been at school with. So, they've got a county management setup, they've a county management team there. This Glen team obviously got that county final 3 years ago and lost to Magherafelt, in a very close game. Obviously, Conor Glass coming home was the catalyst along with Malachy O'Rourke, because it just changed the whole dynamic. But, the likes of Ryan Duggan, Cathal Mulholland, Michael Warnock, Danny Talon, they were all very, very good players in Derry, but there was a feeling that they could miss the boat and they might not push through. Malachy O'Rourke, I think, changed that, because they got somebody who they felt knew how to win big games, knew how to win competitions. He'd already won an Ulster Club with the Loop. So he'd been there and he'd done it. They had put their full faith in him. He'd put their full faith in them. And look, it has been a massive appointment. And I think probably Glen will just do whatever it takes to keep Malachy there for as long as he can, because there's no doubt that, the correlation between Malachy O'Rourke being places and teams being successful, is there for everybody to see.
There's no doubt another manager you'll have learned a lot from over the last couple of years and few years is Mickey Moran. A bit of a guru when it comes to GA management, I think it's fair to say. And I even remember speaking to you before about that moment when Kilcoo were 2 points down in injury time in the All-Ireland Club final, and I think you were saying you were standing between Mickey and Jerome Johnston, and you had a bit of a premonition that that goal was going to come. But you must have learned so much standing on sidelines beside that man.
You do, and I suppose it's very hard to put into words what you learn. It's really whenever you're talking to people and you're in situations and you go, well, what would Mickey do here? And I suppose what he brings, and not unlike Malachy O'Rourke and all the great managers, is that calmness, and they don't panic. They look at the situation and they read it well. And I think Mickey has something very special in as far as his personality. And no matter who meets him or where they meet him, he just has that way of making you feel very, very special. And players love him, and you go back and you listen to things of some of the ex-Donegal players, ex-Mayo players say about him, and he hasn't been there for 15 years or 20 years. So it just shows how special a character it is. But look, excuse me, I'd be talking to Mickey sort of 2 or 3 times, maybe every week, from even when he was there and from he left, and went down to the Glen game on Sunday together as well. So look, their friendships with me and him and Richie and the boys, and and all the Kilcoo people, that will endure. And I suppose when you get through a length of time, you spend that much time, you had 4 years on the road and 3 with Mickey, you just have a relationship and a bond, and when you win, it just makes it that bit more special.
When I spoke to Calum Doherty after he had won the All-Ireland, he said that he had only ever saw Mickey raise his voice once. And I think he said it was the extra time in the All-Ireland final, and he was saying, you have 30 minutes here for all the work you've put in for the whole year, to turn this around. Something along the lines of this, but he said that was the only time that he'd actually seen him raise his voice.
Yeah, look, it was actually half time whenever we were maybe 6 points down and things weren't going well, and I suppose the dynamic had always worked. I would have started and Richie would have been in there, Mickey would have finished, and I don't think I even got starting, and Mickey just threw something and started, and obviously the fact that he never would raise his voice or never would be cross meant everybody sat up and listened, and it was a case at that stage that, look, you have 30 minutes to go and see if you can get yourself back into this game, and if you can't, you're back down the road again with another defeat. And losing an All-Ireland club final is devastating, but I suppose to get back there after the COVID year and a couple of years and not to give of your best, and like we hadn't been our best in that first half, and I suppose once we threw caution at the wind and went at it, look, special things happened, but no, look, Mickey would have lost his temper with me once or twice more, but no, he reserved it for us, and the players always get off a wee bit later.
Scary. It's like the parent who's like the quiet parent or the less scary parent. When they raise their voice, then you're like, Jesus.
Yeah.
It was the semi-final the year before we were playing Ballyboden. The first year that we got to the final, and there was 5 or 6 minutes to go, and this was wherever the sort of mere foreign you could go onto the pitch and get messages out, and I had an altercation with a linesman, and I get sent to the stand, and obviously you get sent to the stand, you lost your, and Mickey he loved getting somebody out and getting messages on. I wasn't there, and he just gave me a stare, and after it into the changing room, and and I said sorry for letting him down, and I was waiting on it, and he never said anything. He just gave me a hug and he says, look, that's a lesson learned, and I really thought I was for it that day, and maybe if we hadn't won that match, it could have been a very different story. I mightn't have been back with him for a second or a third year.
Yeah, Jesus, scary moments. The stare alone speaks 1,000 words, no doubt.
Look, when Mickey gives you that death stare, he doesn't have to say anything. You know you're in trouble.
Yeah, 100%.
Only some people have that, isn't it?
It's an aura.
Yeah, it is. It's a presence.
Does it give you ambitions, Conleith, your experiences, and obviously heading into the Edendorf job as well, for inter-county management? I know there's a lot more, I don't know if pressure is the word, because there's pressure on club management as well, for sure, but maybe more of a media focus on the inter-county job. Is that something that you harbour ambitions of in the coming years?
Yeah, look, that'd be something I'd love to do. Obviously, when you come from like a setup what Kilcoo had, like it would be very similar to, been involved in a county setup because of the sort of stages of the year you're at and things. So no, look, it's something I'd love to try at some point, as well as maybe in the next year or two, sort of managing my own club, Ballinderry. Obviously, I've been involved with the sort of a wee group there from probably under sixes, and this year we're beating the minor semi-final. So I have a lad that's moved across into senior, so maybe after a couple of years of him being there on his own without me annoying him, because I had been sort of helping and coaching his team all the time, and and that's not easy. And I suppose this year Killian Conlon's the Ballinderry manager, and I think it's probably a chance for Adam to get away from me, where I'm not probably been too sore on him, or he's not been too sore on me, and obviously all the rows that happen at training or at matches are always brought into the home. And for anybody that sort of manages their son at any top level, I'd have great admiration for him, because it's not an easy thing to do.
It's the car journeys.
Yeah,
that's the worst one. Going
silence
from
probably.
The games.
Yeah. Silence is worse.
It's more so whenever his mummy was at the match and takes his side, and they all gang up on me at home, and I'm in trouble for it.
Yeah, you're the victim. You're the victim here, Conleith. Yeah.
It's happened once or twice, and look, to be fair, you're always sore on your own, and a lot of the times, you would say things, or you'd take them off, or you might take off somebody else, and it probably is something that's very hard to navigate. And as I say, I would have great admiration for anybody that's been able to do it at the top level.
Well, geez, that brings me nicely into the next question, because there was a few headlines when Ballybay, the Monaghan County champions, were drawn to play Kilcoo in the Ulster Club Championship this year, and of course Jerome Johnston, a man you know very well, in charge of Ballybay. Now he opted to step aside. Of course, he has sons and nephews, and Jesus, loads of family members, Johnstons, on that Kilcoo team. Now apparently he had made his plans quite clear to Ballybay from the outset of taking the job, that if we ever meet Kilcoo, I don't want to be involved. I can't manage against my blood. It was a bit of an awkward one, Conleith, because some people are saying, Jesus, he has to. You're the manager of Ballybay, you have to be involved. But then you look at the human element, and you're like, well, must be so tough to try and come up and plan against your own family.
Yeah, look, the situation it was in, it had been quite a while from Ballybay had won a championship, let alone got a run in the Ulster Club. So I suppose at the outset he laid a stall out, but the likelihood of it happening was very, very unlikely. So I probably think in the back of his head he probably thought, well, it might never happen. Even we do win a championship, our paths might cross, one of the two teams might be beaten. But look, whenever the draw for Ulster was made, I suppose he was probably looking back at it and thinking, well, we'd still have to beat the Armagh champions, and it was Crossmaglen and so formidable. But look, to be fair, Jerome, from these boys were, and a lot of the senior team now were very, very young. He was part of the under 14s and the minor teams that were very successful. So as well as having 6 nephews and 3 sons on top of that, look, he's a huge Kilcoo supporter, and I never ever thought there was a situation where that he was going to manage against Kilcoo, and I suppose it took a few days probably for word to break out. But and Mark Dorn had somebody there that was able to hold the reins, and look, it would have been the most difficult day would have been for him. I know he didn't go to the game, and that would have been very difficult, particularly after the game when you don't win. You have to make contact with players, and you don't really know how they're going to feel. But I know, chatting to Paul Finlay and some of the boys that would know a wee bit better, they would have nothing but great time for Jerome, and they completely stood behind his decision. And on the day, they were brilliant in Crossmaglen, and I suppose that gave us a really good feel for how good they could be. And had they have script through that game or not played as well, we mightn't have been as well prepared, but we'd had to prepare really well for them, and we did, and that sort of gave us the advantage because we'd seen them at their best.
Is that something you've had to do even when you're involved with Kilcoo and now heading to Eden Dork? Have you had to make it clear that if you do end up coming up against Ballinderry in an Ulster Club Championship game that you want to step aside, or have you even had that or thought of having that conversation?
No, look, I haven't actually met anybody, the players or anybody at Eden Dork just yet, but no, I'll definitely not be on the sideline if that happens. But very, very interestingly, I suppose we would have a competition in Ulster's an Ulster League, and it would be a very minor pre-season competition. And in my first year in with Kilcoo, and they played Ballinderry in that competition, and and I stood on the sideline and I never opened my mouth, but it was a very difficult thing to do. And especially when you have family, and and I suppose at that stage I had still played with all the players because I just finished and I just retired. So it happened a number of years ago with Ronan McGuckin when he managed Ergal Kieran, and they played Ballinderry and he stepped away, and look, Ergal won that day, and it was the right decision for him. And everybody has to make them decisions on their own, and what's right for somebody maybe isn't right for somebody else, and that's just the nature of it. You kind of go outside your county because you don't want that hassle, and probably when you're successful, that's the only opportunity that the teams have of beating. So, but there'll be a lot of stars would have to align for anything like that to happen either way.
Of course. Listen, Conleith, great with your time as always. I'm just looking here, so it's yourself and this St Malachy's club man Justin Core taking charge of Eden Dork now, as we said. Niall Morgan, Darren McCurry, Conn Kilpatrick, they're coming up from the intermediate ranks as well in Tyrone. So very best of luck with that one, and no doubt we'll catch up with you in the coming months as well.
You will. Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, Conleith.
Great stuff. Conleith Gilligan there, of course, the new Eden Dork boss. Always a pleasure chatting to Conleith Gilligan.
Absolutely, yeah.
OTBAM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We'll be back tomorrow morning with Adrian and myself. We'll be joined by a host of Irish stars on a packed show, including Irish international Louise Quinn, Ronan O'Gara, Jenny Murphy, Alan Quinlan, and plenty more besides. Right now we're going to leave you with the Arsenal and Ireland legend Emma Byrne and the Kerry senior footballer Louise Galvin, who joined Joe on last night's show to follow up on the interview with Reading and Scotland's Emma Mitchell from this week's Koi Gig podcast, which has been getting some serious traction across Ireland and the UK and the media since its airing. Thanks a million, Ashley, as always,
Shane,
for your time this morning.
Always a pleasure.
Great show, and to the whole team as well. Take a look at that interview, and while you're at it, remind yourselves to have a tremendous Thursday. Good luck.
Now, you're very welcome back. So we are turning to an interview on this week's Koi Gig podcast. Emma McCandy is the Reading captain. She is the Scottish captain. She's a high-profile player. And speaking to the podcast, and the interview has made waves, both sides of the Irish Sea. The FA have responded to it as well. She was highlighting the lack of support for pregnant players, and her experience, as you'll hear, back in 2021, was a pretty miserable one.
I think it was a season that we came back after COVID. So I think I played up until I was like 8 weeks. I remember playing, we played, I never really got morning sickness, but I used to feel really, really sick like later on in the afternoon, and we played Bristol away in like a night game. And it was like, I had the pre-match and I was like, oh, like I was literally like run. We ended up getting beat actually that night as well. And I just thought, I can't do this any longer, because like you just end up kind of running a wee bit weird, because like, I've got a little baby in my belly, and like you don't want to get hit, and like that's not my game. Like I like the hit folk, so yeah, like I then had to fake an injury because I didn't want to tell people that I was pregnant until the 12-week scan, just because you didn't know if everything's going to be all right. So that was pretty tough. I then did have to tell the coach, because I was it was probably no right that I kept it for that long anyway. But at the same time, you didn't really want to. I think at the time in that as well, there was nothing in the contracts to say that if you were pregnant, there was no any support put in place. So I didn't want to tell anybody in case it didn't go down well. Then obviously you're a bit like, well, they can't sack you because you could basically sue them. So I kind of had that on my side as well. But no, like I'm not really sure if everybody was buzzing for me, but they obviously said that they were. Then after that, I just kind of done my own bit of training, which when I look back, it was actually really, really lonely, like, which is quite sad to think about it, but you just kind of get left to do your own thing. I think that's another thing. There's not really that much research on that side of stuff to say how much, like, you can and can't do. So every single day, like, I basically just went on the bike. Then when I got too heavy, I just went swimming. And I felt that I had to go to training every day as well, just because they were still paying me. So I felt under pressure to still be at the training ground every single day. Like, even at like 40 weeks, I was still going in because I just was like, well, maybe not actually 40 weeks because I think I broke off 39 maybe, and she was 2 weeks late anyway. So, but yeah, like I think that was pretty tough because at least like if you do, like, you've got like a long-term injury and that, you have like a program and like there's milestones to hit and like you start progressing and the coaches show a little bit more interest in you because you're closer to being back and like more useful for them. Whereas like you're pregnant and you're out for 9 months and probably another, I was 7 at the back of that you're no good to the team, so you do just kind of get like left to the side. And yeah, but I mean everybody would probably be the same. Maybe that's just, or maybe they just didn't like me, I'm not really sure.
So that's Emma McCandy speaking on the Koi Gig podcast. Well worth checking out the full interview. Emma Byrne was part of it, part of the Koi Gig podcast and that interview. Former Republic of Ireland and Arsenal goalkeeper. She's with us on the line. Evening, Emma.
Hello, how are you?
Very well. Yeah, great. Louise Galvin, Kerry footballer, Irish Rugby International, high profile return to the Kerry jersey shortly after giving birth as well. Louise, great to have you on. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for the show. How are you?
Great. Emma, you obviously sat in on that full interview. It sounded, just to talk about Emma McCandy specifically for a moment, it certainly sounded like her experience at Reading was a miserable one. What struck you about the interview?
I know Emma very, very well, so I was kind of with her through all the steps anyway. I just think, it kind of hit home when she was saying about how lonely it was. She was on her own. As any injury is, when you're injured, coming back, it is quite a lonely place. But the fact that she was going to be out for that long and she had to basically try and keep herself right on her own, I thought it was a little bit sad. But that's how it is. That's how inexperienced the clubs are at the moment in this regard. Like, they don't have any experience on how to train a pregnant footballer and what they need to do with these players. So it's just basically down to inexperience.
On the financial side, Emma, so there was a study in 2017 FIFPro did at the World Players Union, and they found an amazing statistic, really, that just 2% of players were mothers. Many women quit football because of a lack of maternity policy. So that was a real crisis point, I would think, in 2017. 2021, FIFA implemented new rules for maternity leave. So players entitled to a minimum of 14 weeks maternity cover on 2/3 their salary. And the English FA went one step further. It was 14 weeks of maternity leave on 100% of their wage. So Emma McCandy talked there about the loneliness of training and feeling a pressure to go in to training while she was still pregnant. Presumably before she gives birth, her maternity leave doesn't kick in. Is the norm that a female player is on full pay across the 9 months and then the 14 weeks maternity leave kicks in? Because this is not obviously a normal profession whereby most pregnant women in most jobs can work for the vast majority of their pregnancy. That footballers can't do that, obviously. So to what extent does 14 weeks cut the mustard here?
I mean, it all depends on the person, how quickly they come back. But it's not long enough. It's definitely not long enough to try and get back to the level you were at. Absolutely not. And the problem is, I'd just like to say with Emma, Reading did pay the maternity leave, which is for me the basic thing to do, but they did honour that contract. But the problem is that it's not a normal job. You're right. It's, Emma had to go into training as any woman would go into work, but it's the aftercare and coming back and, you as a club, you want to get this player back to the level they were at. And Emma McCandy is an extremely important player for Reading as well. And they just don't have the knowledge on how to do that. Yes, they have doctors and physios, but these are, the physios are trained to get players back from injuries and things like that. And that was Emma's main problem.
Right.
And it wasn't the pay, although they aren't paid enough anyway, because, to get childcare and to have to pay childcare and stuff like that, it's just not enough. But Emma's problem was when she was coming back that she didn't know when to push herself. She didn't know what to do. She was left on her own a lot. And that was really difficult for her. And, Emma's extremely competitive as well. She wanted to get back as soon as possible, but nobody really could help her in that aspect.
Okay, so that was more so her issue maybe than the pay, which is obviously important.
Yeah, but she also was what I consider lucky, because before that, as she said herself, the contracts only came into play as she was coming out of work, going on to maternity leave. Whereas before that, there was absolutely nothing, and it was a choice. You either have a baby and stop playing. But we had players in our team at Arsenal that had kids and came back, but it was because our manager at the time was very good, and he was very, kind of up to date, really more modern, and he allowed time off and he allowed them to bring their kids in to work with them, and just kind of like allowed that balance of having a kid and playing football.
Louise, you're perfectly placed to give us the experience of coming back to sport after giving birth. I think you surprised, I think the video got millions of views in the end. Aisling O'Reilly was speaking to you after an All-Ireland semi-final against Mayo. You were in your Kerry jersey, and it was brilliant in a way, very progressive for sport at large. You were talking about, well, I've been breastfeeding my newborn son in the dressing room there, and then I went out and played the match. And you have a perfect insight, I suppose, to give us about presumably the dearth of knowledge when it comes to how mothers should come back from pregnancy and approach sport.
Yeah, I definitely think dearth is a good kind of descriptive word for what's out there. I suppose similar to Emma, when I would have finished the Kerry season 2021 playing my last game around 8 or 9 weeks. Now, obviously GAA is an amateur sport, so there wasn't any contracts or anything at play. And I did speak to my managers even before the game and got medical clearance and that. But I suppose it all comes back to even as well for women who are trying to have a baby and play sport at the same time. Like, you're putting it off because you want to get the most out of your sporting career, which isn't great either. I mean, and if you run into difficulty then trying to conceive, you have all this potential guilt around that. And I guess we were really lucky, and I didn't know if I ever would get back, but kind of as things progressed and the season was going with Kerry, there was a slight glimmer of hope, and I kind of went for it hammer and tongs. And to be honest, it was incredibly difficult. I certainly didn't get back to my peak or anywhere near it in time for championship, and I suppose it's more to say I was on the panel as opposed to actually playing. But how it worked out well for me was built on more relationships with people around me, including the management and the team, rather than any actual structure, rather than any blueprint to follow. And similarly, just like Emma was saying, the S&Cs, physios, they're all there. They're trained around players returning from injury, not returning from sort of a kind of women's health specialist point of view. So all of that I would have done off my own kind of bat, went off and gotten private women's health physio appointments to make sure I was safe to progress in terms of my pelvic health and post surgery, because I ended up having a section as well. Okay. But I guess I was lucky in that from my, I suppose, international rugby experience, I had done an awful lot of gym on my own, and I had a fairly good idea of my body, and we have a gym out the back, so I was able to, luxuries that other players don't have, I was able to maybe tailor my own training a lot through that knowledge. But I guess that the saddest thing for me was the amount of players both in my club and in the county team who were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're back. It's great, but I thought after having a baby you couldn't come back," or it just wasn't seen. And it's just so sad that that's the norm out there, because just like we said at the beginning, the prime kind of years for, I suppose, fertility and having babies are also your prime years for reaching your peak performance in sport, and the two should be able to go hand in hand, but they really don't.
And Louise, you work as a physio, so you've a deeper understanding than your average person of the area of sports science as well. For postnatal athletes, so it sounds, listening to you, like there's no real blueprint that is readily available. I saw in a piece in the Irish Independent that you were speaking to Sinead Kassan, and you remember asking even the public health nurse when she came to the house, so when can I, for instance, play contact sport? And it was a pretty blank look that came back at you. So that knowledge just isn't out there across the board.
No, and look, in fairness, public health nurse has a lot to cover from the cradle to the grave, as they say out in the community. So I wouldn't expect her to maybe have that knowledge as well.
No, and to be fair to her, it's suggested it's not something she's been asked all that often. Maybe
she was never asked that before. Right. So yeah, the knowledge just isn't out there. And when I went searching, there are some guidelines, there's kind of more UK-based guidelines around returning to run. But it was literally starting running at 12 weeks, whereas I was back in Kerry at 10 weeks. Now, I wouldn't say that's the way to do it. It was just the way the season was going. If I wanted to get back, I had to get back pretty ASAP. And then there was some other guidelines coming in from the American side. And I guess, it's so individualised because it's based on your as an athlete, it's based on your training age, what you've done before, your level of fitness, and then obviously the pregnancy that you had, the type of delivery that you had, and then how you are right now. I mean, there's such high rates of things like postnatal depression, how you're maybe feeding your baby, is your baby sleeping at all, the desire to get back. There's just so many variables that I can see why maybe there was no guidelines up until now, but I think it does need to change, because if women do want to get back playing, that should be achievable. And we're not talking about, investing millions of euro or whatever it is into finding these guidelines. It's probably mostly common sense based, but there's just very little out there at the moment.
Emma, it's quite interesting. You said that things were pretty progressive at Arsenal just by dint of having the right manager at the right time, and maybe those Arsenal players were lucky as a result. The FA imposed this 14-week minimum. That's not to say that should be the maximum. Are many clubs going above and beyond and making things, ultra easy for prospective mothers? What's your sense of the WSL at large, beyond Reading, beyond Arsenal?
Yeah, I mean, the FA have the guidelines in place and the policy in place, but as Louise says, it changes all the time. It can't be specific to certain players, and I think some clubs are too specific with those guidelines. Like, obviously, we had loopholes coming back from having a baby 4 months afterwards, and she's straight back in training, looks extremely fit. She looks like she's ready to play. With Emma Mitchell is different. She had complications, so it's going to take her a bit longer. And Reading knew that. Like, you can't force people to train if they can't train. It is literally, if they're fit to train, they can train. So, yeah, I mean, everyone's different and the clubs will treat it differently. But for example, like in the case of Reading, like they don't have, their policy is no children in at the training ground. I think it's to do with insurance or something like that, where other clubs I know for a fact do allow that, because they're going to accommodate the fact that moms might not be able to get a sitter on a Sunday or on a Monday evening at 8:00 or whatever, because it's not your normal 9 to 5. So I do know other clubs do accommodate that, and they allow, maybe they come in for a cool down, or they'll have someone in there that can take care of the baby while the mom is training. But that's not a policy. It's not, written in the contract. It just depends on who's at the club and their power in the club, I suppose.
Emma, this is more of a cultural question almost, but was it when it came to motherhood, was there ever an atmosphere where it was discouraged? Was there ever for a manager, it's akin to, well, I've just lost, you might as well have a cruciate injury. Like, I've lost you for X number of months now. Was there ever a sense of, girls, big season, let's not have anybody get, it's not, I presume it never went.
Nobody's allowed to get pregnant.
But I presume it was never that dysfunctional down the years.
No, it wasn't. But, as a player, as Louise says, that you want to play at the top level when you're in your prime, and if you were planning on having a baby, you're basically saying, I'm not going to play for a year, which is a really difficult decision for any athlete. And the fact is that it wasn't really known. It wasn't really a common thing. If somebody got pregnant, it was like, oh, see you, bye. Might never see you again. Have a good life type of thing.
Because contracts wouldn't be especially long either.
No, and it wouldn't. And it just wasn't done. Like players had kids and they just didn't come back for it. And they weren't really encouraged to. In fact, the first person I was kind of gobsmacked by was Katie Chapman, because Katie already had a child when she was at Fulham, and then she came to Arsenal and she fell pregnant soon after that. And I was like, oh, wow, congratulations and all this. We're heading into Champions League. It's a shame. And she's like, I'll be back for the final. You get to the final, I'll be back. I was like, oh, okay, brilliant. But I was a little bit shocked by it. But again, it is down to mentality and how they're encouraged to get back as well. And I think at Arsenal, they were always encouraged. Katie was training out like that. I'd say she was 7 months gone and she was still running around with us. Obviously, we were taking very good care of her.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just depends on the club, which I don't think it should be that. There should be certain, in the contracts and players should feel like it's their right to have a kid if they want to have a kid and be encouraged to do so.
Yes. So there's really a catch-up here. Louise, you did allude to the priorities female players would have, their sporting career versus having a child, and often falling into the very understandable, I was going to say trap or tendency to put it off. And then maybe, I think the older we get, we all realise how common fertility problems are. And so there's you mentioned, God, would there be a guilt there? I don't know. And it probably applies to women in their careers right across the board, but certainly in sport, when your window is so small in comparison with other sports, I don't know whose responsibility it is, but you would kind of hope the point is made to younger players or female players in their mid-20s, like, this is something you really should think about. Consider your fertility. You consider freezing your eggs if you want, but like almost an open dialogue. If think about your sporting career and your ambitions to be a mother very much in tandem. And it doesn't sound like that conversation is happening in a very open way, maybe listening to you.
Well, that conversation, like, I've played across 3 sports and it's never happened. I think it's more, it's a bit more global now. It's a bit more societal that, I even could see the way people look at you when as soon as you're pregnant, they're already writing you off. And it might be just, your neighbour or a friend. You're like, gosh, that's the end of it now. And the amount of people...
Even before that, Louise, when you get married, the next thing is, oh, when you're having kids. And it's like in people's mindset straight away, right?
Yeah. Even when I got engaged at a Dubai Sevens tournament. And I remember the head coach thought it looked a bit, I don't know. And then someone else said, I bet you he thinks you're pregnant, which I thought was hilarious. And like that was probably his next thought process, that I was gone for the rest of the season or something. But yeah, I think it's more of a societal thing that people in general, but in and out of sport, just start to see you differently. And there's probably even a bit of an expectation that you should be at home minding the baby, and that's all you should do. Because like, it's difficult coming back, but also what's changed now is we keep talking about the pregnancy, 9 months, and your body completely changes, and then you have to go back to the fitness level. But you also have a baby to mind that's growing and then starting to crawl and starting to walk, and you're talking about babysitting. And like, often as sports go, your partner's probably a lot of the time involved in sport as well, and it's trying to juggle that side of it. So and if it's not encouraged or facilitated, or even just in the media, like seen as a norm thing, it's just almost subconsciously written off. So I think everyone has the kind of it's not just management, because in fairness, a manager wants all their best players on the pitch. I don't think that's an unfair thing for them to want. I don't expect them going around telling you maybe consider having a family early, but at the same time, societally, if it becomes normal that, oh yeah, she's having a baby, it's up to her then if she wants to come back and try and play again after that, and that her own support network support that if they can, and the team and the management and just the general, I suppose, media world, social media, that it's not seen as, oh, you're not gone off, you're still playing. So I think it goes a bit bigger than just within the team environment.
Yeah, and Emma, final thought, it should be encouraged, it should be openly talked about. You would hate to think of young players putting their sporting career first because they felt they had to, and then meeting problems in later life when they wanted to become a parent and having a huge sense of regret, and you know, that should not be the cost of a sports career.
No, absolutely not. And when you think about football contracts, a lot of them are 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, and to fall pregnant in that, it is difficult then, you know, to try and get another contract, which again is another problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely.